Last night, a great buzz at the park. Hottest team ever. Big names, big stars, big frustration. Because the kid was dealing. And Giancarlo was working. And the Marlins beat the Dodgers. Tonight, Jacob Turner gets the ball. And off we go again. Chris Capuano for the Dodgers. Marlins, Dodgers. Los Angeles meets Miami.
A sweeping view of downtown Miami, and into Marlins Park they come, the Fish and the Dodgers. Game 2 of a 4-game set. If it's anywhere near Game 1, you're in for a treat tonight. And Danny Echeverria, kind of the forgotten Cuban last night. Donovan Solano, a hitting hero for the Fish. And, of course, Jacob Turner trying to straighten things out. He walked 6 his last time out against Kansas City. Rich Waltz, along with Tommy Hutton. Welcome back to Miami. Welcome back to Marlins and Dodgers. And that buzz is still floating around this place, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun last night. A little different tonight. Jose Fernandez not pitching. Yasiel Puig not in the lineup. But I'll tell you what, the Dodgers are a terrific club. Jacob Turner trying to come back from an outing where he walked 6 in Kansas City.
Baseball is a game of statistics and nuances, and a couple of stats on a couple of players are worth mentioning, especially coming into this ball game after last night. And let's start with Donovan Solano.
And a couple of guys, Rich, who had an impact in the ball game last night. Donovan Solano, number one, has played tremendous defense at second base, but he has sprayed hits all over the place. Right now, Solano working on a 5-game hitting streak, hitting .450 during that time. Donovan Solano, a .400 batting average with runners in scoring position. Giancarlo Stanton. Marlins Park, a big park. Don't tell that to G. 12 home runs of his 15 have been hit right here. Stanton also working on a hitting streak. He's hit in 6 straight. A little trouble against Capuano. He's 2 for 14 against him.
Stanton the muscle. Solano the best with runners in scoring position. 3rd straight lefty that the Marlins have faced. It's Chris Capuano going for the Dodgers, our Coventry Healthcare matchup.
Not as hard a thrower as the ones they've seen prior, Bumgarner and Ryu. A good off-speed guy, a 35-year-old veteran. He turned 35 yesterday, as a matter of fact. But the Dodgers have rallied behind him. In his last 6 starts, the Dodgers have gone 6-0.
On the other side, control, fastball command, strikes, all things that Chuck Hernandez has talked to Jacob Turner about.
Yeah, it's amazing the outing that Jacob Turner had in Kansas City. He gave up just 1 earned run, even though he walked 6, didn't strike anybody out. But you hit it on the head, Rich. Command and have that 2-seamer in the strike zone.
All right, walk-up song. What does it mean? Which one do you like? It's an Email Twitter Tuesday. That will be one of the subjects we'll get to tonight. Marlins and Dodgers coming up.
And It's because the Miami Heat uses it when they do their starting lineups, and the whole crowd goes,
One's Versace by Drake, and the other is
Well, it's not football. You got to get up for every game here, and for the Marlins, got to forget about a great win last night and get the business here tonight.
Well, that's why you play 162 of them, whether it's a loss or a win. You got one the next day, and move on. Turn the page.
All right, so we'll see if they can match the energy of this game tonight on an email Twitter Tuesday. Let's go back down near the Marlins dugout to Allison Williams.
Hey there, guys. The modern baseball player gets to pick more than what kind of bat he uses or glove he wears. He also gets to pick the soundtrack to his game. For about the last 20 years, baseball players have been able to choose their walk-up song or entrance music for pitchers. And a lot of times they'll go for something that shows their personality, gets the crowd going, or just gets them in the right mental state. We had a chance to talk to some of the Marlins player about the music they choose.
It is by the White Stripes, Seven Nation Army. And it's because the Miami Heat uses it when they do their starting lineups, and the whole crowd goes,
One's Versace by Drake, and the other is Click Remix by, has a bunch of Rick Ross and Rocky Fresh. I picked them because our walk-up songs are more like songs you hear on the radio, and you know, every time it comes on, you're like dancing in your car and stuff like that. But
salsa, it's remember me about Barranquilla, something like that. Feel comfortable with some music, remember me where I'm from.
A Lecrae song. He's a Christian artist, and I picked it because I just wanted to find a way to use this platform and pitch in and share my faith, through the song, and it also fires me up out there. It's like a rap/rock song, and it just gets me going.
That's why the Fish have chosen the music they have. But what about you? What would be your walk-up song? Send us your tweets and emails at Fox Marlins, or go to foxsportsflorida.com, click on Game Connect, and ask the broadcast. Use that hashtag walk-up-song. Let us know the music that gets you moving, that if you were a big league ball player, you would go with. All right, that's coming up on the broadcast. But next, it's tweets, it's emails, and it's baseball. Game 2, Marlins, Dodgers, Jacob Turner on the mound. First pitch is next.
So are we. Jacob Turner, pinch and penny brings you the first pitch. Carl Crawford goes after it, drives it in the air to center field. Justin Ruggiano is out there tonight, and he makes the catch. And just like that, one pitch, 15 seconds. That's all it takes for an out to be made. After Crawford, Don Mattingly sends up Mark Ellis. Adrian Gonzalez reminded me that the lineups are brought to you by JM Lexus. Hanley Ramirez hits cleanup. Andre Ethier in center field. Juan Uribe, a big night last night with 3 hits. Skip Schumacher, a versatile right fielder. Tim Fedorovich is the catcher, the personal catcher for Chris Capuano. And Turner takes aim at Mark Ellis. Significant Tommy Hutton that his first 2 pitches have been strikes, because throwing strikes his last time out, not easy.
Kind of a crazy outing. When you go 5 innings, you give up 2 runs, just 1 earned run, but 6 walks and no strikeouts. And a couple of quick outs here for Jacob Turner. Good sign.
This is going to make Chuck Hernandez quite pleased. Hernandez talked about Turner pounding the strike zone. Mike Rebben said the Dodgers have to be forced to swing the bat tonight. No walks tonight. Cleveland Clinic brings you the Marlins defense.
And there's a look. You mentioned Ruggiano in center field, and he's flanked by Stanton and Yelich. And Lucas Echeverria, Solano, and Logan Morrison. What a terrific play Solano made last night. And I don't think Casey Kochman has changed positions. Jeff Mathis behind the plate, who also said he needed the good 2-seamer from Jacob Turner.
Adrian Gonzalez at the plate. Gonzalez last night against Jose Fernandez had a base hit. And he takes down low. Gonzalez in the 3 spot in a Dodger order that's been humming, a rotation that's been fantastic, a bullpen that's been lights out, and you add that up, and the Dodgers still have won 42 of 52 games despite the loss last night to Miami, and they've still won 10 of their last 12. And Turner goes 3-0 on Gonzalez.
Making his first ever appearance against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Adrian Gonzalez, by the way, the type of hitter you can't put that big shift on. We saw him flick a line drive toward third base last night. He'll use the entire field. You can play him off the line. Lucas is well off the line, but that's about it.
That ball is hammered into the gap. Stanton after it, and he just missed it on a diving catch. Stanton is down. Up with the ball is Ruggiano. It's a double for Gonzalez. Stanton looks up, and he looks to be okay. He thought he had it. He thought he had a shot at it, and he almost got it. It looked like it may have actually tipped off the very edge of his glove.
That's good effort by Giancarlo. He got a pretty good jump, tracked it, had a good route, but the ball was hit well by Gonzalez.
Well, you saw that arm and the wrist of Stanton as he dove. It kind of rolled up under him. Just like last night, a warm ovation for Hanley Ramirez. Off the double by Gonzalez. Fernandez handled Ramirez last night. Faced him 3 times. Struck him out once. And he flied out twice. Stanton, Solano, Morrison. And it's Solano who makes the catch. Jacob Turner gets through the first unscathed. Dodgers did not score. Marlins come to the plate in this orderly fashion. It's brought to you by JM Lexus. Christian Yelich in left, Donovan Solano at second, Giancarlo Stanton in right, Logan Morrison at first, Ed Lucas at third. That first five all had nice contributions to last night's win. Justin Ruggiano started in center, Adeiny Echeverria out at short, Jeff Mathis behind the plate, catching Jacob Turner.
First start for Chris Capuano as a 35-year-old. He turned 35 yesterday. Been on the disabled list a couple of times this year, a calf problem, a shoulder injury, but a guy the Marlins have seen a lot of over the years, 15 career starts. Not these Marlins have seen a lot of, but he has pitched against the Fish many times. He's having a pretty good run. He's number 5 guy in their rotation, but solid, not overpowering, and he has one of the best, if not the best, move to first base as a left-handed pitcher.
So good a move that no one runs on him anymore. It's only two stolen base attempts all year. Here are the Dodgers defensively, brought to you by the Cleveland Clinic, Florida.
Well, with Carl Crawford, Andre Ethier's in center, and Skip Schumacher gets the start in right field. Uribe and Hanley Ramirez, Mark Ellis, Adrian Gonzalez, and behind the plate is Tim Fedorovich, who is the personal catcher for Capuano.
Which is an odd pairing because Capuano went to Duke, Fedorovich went to North Carolina. Yelich bunts it foul down the third base line, and the Marlins see their third consecutive lefty. They've gone from hard to a little softer to really soft in Madison Bumgarner, Hyun-Jin Ryu last night, and now Capuano, who, if you're not patient and you're overly aggressive, he will eat you alive.
He's going to nibble. He's not going to throw too many pitches right down the middle of the plate.
Breaking ball misses out. Here's his scouting report.
Well, we've told you a lot about him. Don't sleep at first base. Yeah, he's got that great move. He'll throw some cutters, and he'll triple up on that changeup. He'll throw 2 or 3 of them in a row.
Tommy was going to list all of his surgeries on the scouting report, but ran out of room.
We didn't have enough room.
2 Tommy John surgeries, 2002, that was early in his professional career. 2008, and that 2008 surgery came a year after he had labrum surgery in his shoulder. But he's been healthy for a while and effective for a while. Last year with the Dodgers, almost 200 innings, 33 starts, a 3.74 ERA, and a .500 record at 12-12. An all-star back in 2006 with Milwaukee. On Marlins Live, Tommy Hutton detailed the success that Christian Yelich and Logan Morrison have had against lefties, which obviously comes into play tonight.
Yeah, I like this matchup with Yelich and Logan Morrison in the lineup. I think they, I mean, not that they're going to feel comfortable, but it's not the type of left-hander that has that real nasty breaking ball.
And that's smacked down the line. It's fair, and into the corner it goes. And off to the races is Yelich. Crawford picks it out of the corner, and Yelich opens with a double.
Well, Yelich had the big RBI double in the 3rd inning last night against Ryu. And again, the lefties a little more comfortable against Capuano compared to some other left-handers. Fastball out over the plate. Yelich stays back. Sweet swing down that line. Double all the way.
For Christian Yelich now, 6 doubles to go with a triple and a home run. And the Marlins will try to get him over and get him in now. Here is Donovan Solano, who not only is Miami's best hitter with runners in scoring position, he's one of their best hitters in this spot, trying to move a runner. Goes to the right side, but flips it foul. And the count's 0-1. Solano, a couple hits last night. His last 11 games with runners in scoring position, he's only 9 for his last 14.
Hey, the Marlins as a team last night were 4 for 6 runners in scoring position.
We have yet to throw out the first email or tweet. That's on hold. Ellis to first. And Solano did exactly what he wanted to do. Push the ball to the right side. Gets Yelich over, and now here comes Stanton against Capuano. And this is going to be a real interesting battle between finesse and soft against pure muscle.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to track record because Giancarlo against Capuano in his career just 2 for 14. But the last 2-3 games, Stanton has looked real comfortable and has had nice swings at the plate.
Infield is back. And Capuano misses in with the breaking ball. Stanton, who blasted one to left center field for a home run last night, having a nice homestand with a pair of home runs. Stanton, a ground ball with the infield back. That'll produce a run. Nicely done. 39th RBI for Stanton. Miami's on the board with a 1-0 lead.
Well, that's a nice job, and if you're Giancarlo, you go in. One of the first guys you thank is Donovan Solano. Obviously, Christian Yelich for starting it with a double. Solano got Yelich to third. The infield back, and Stanton picks up the RBI just like that.
Here's Morrison now. He's hit in 7 straight. He fouls one off. 2 for 4 last night. Morrison with a couple of doubles. His 6th inning double drove in a run. And his 8th inning double contributed to that put-away inning in which the Marlins got 3 runs to take a 4-run lead. Ended up winning the ball game 6-2. Breaking ball misses outside.
For the left-handers, for Yelich and Logan Morrison, the key is doing what both of them have done already early, laying off that breaking ball, which is his 3rd pitch. That's his 3rd best pitch. Just lay off that breaking ball off the plate.
Well, in the dirt, Steve from Miami. Here's her first email, Tommy. Who's going to take Jose Fernandez's spot when he reaches his innings limit?
You know, we've talked about some of the youngsters that have thrown the ball well. We hear the name Brian Flynn, a left-hander. We hear his name often. Andrew Heaney.
Here's the one thing to think about.
Would be another possibility.
With some of those youngsters, though. You'll be extending their season from what they're normally used to as they pitch a 5-month minor league season. If somebody really hasn't been taxed this year and they feel they can get a couple starts out of them, though, it'll be one of those kids. Gonzalez steps on the bag at first. Morrison is out. And the inning is over, but not before Miami gets a run. I wonder what his walk-up song is. Smoothies. Jacob Turner now into the second. Turner gets Andre Ethier, Juan Uribe, and Skip Schumacher. Oftentimes, we bring you a list of Marlin killers, guys that have great averages and big numbers against the Marlins. The Dodgers actually did that for us today on the front page of their notes, because Andre Ethier, active leaders, 100 ABs or more. Ethier, 388. Gregor Blanco is at 387. Matt Diaz is still up there at 360. Of course, Diaz is a member of the Marlins organization right now. He's on the disabled list. Joey Votto, Adrian Beltre, Matt Holliday among those on the list. Up the middle, tough play. Echeverria slides, gets it, and Ethier adds to his Marlin killer legacy with another hit. And we get to another email. Spencer in Plantation. As we watch this dribbler up the middle. Spencer wants to know, Tommy, to be a broadcaster, when you receive questions, do you just get the answers, or are you baseball geniuses?
We're just shy of the genius ranking, but we have the crack staff to help us out all the time.
We have a crack staff. We have John Chimchuk is our resident baseball historian. We have the folks in the truck. We have the internet up here. Tommy has the iPad. So no, Spencer, we're not at the genius level. I think the key is trying to know where to go to find it.
Yeah, there is a lot of stuff over the last 49 years that kind of hangs up in there that I can pull out once in a while, but sometimes you have to use the iPad, check a baseball reference, go to some of the different sites.
Juan Uribe, 3 hits last night, and the Marlins had a devil of a time getting him out.
I get a good tweet here too from Natalie. She likes the topic, and she said that her walk-up song would be Alicia Keys, "Girl on Fire." Good song, good singer.
Here's the 1-1. Runner goes, hit and run liner into center field. Round second, on his way to third goes Ethier, and the Dodgers put the game in motion and suddenly have runners at the corners and nobody out here in the second.
The Marlins are having a hard time figuring out Juan Uribe. He was 3 for 4 last night. 3 for 3 off Jose Fernandez with a little movement. Ethier on the move, good hit and run. Uribe, a good contact guy, and just like that, first and third.
What's happened to Juan Uribe? I mean, he was awful the last 2 years.
I think part of it,
I know he's at the end of his contract.
Part of it, that's part of it. Supporting cast.
All right.
Supporting cast.
I mean, in 2011, he hit 204. He hit 191 last year.
Because right now, they're not expecting much from Juan Uribe.
It's at the back end of a 3-year, $21 million contract. Here is Skip Schumacher, former Cardinal. Former Gaucho, UC Santa Barbara. 8 years with the Cardinals. Marlins saw a lot of Schumacher, not only in the National League, but also at spring training. Versatile guy, could play infield, play in the outfield.
He has started, Rich, games this year in all 3 outfield spots, and he's also started some games at second base.
Oh, 0-2.
He's a part of that versatile and veteran bench that we talked about last night. Another part of the Dodger club that sometimes goes overlooked.
Fred in Hollywood wants a Tommy Hutton rant. Alex Rodriguez controversy. Your thoughts? See, that's too easy. I mean, every day it changes. It's a mess. Let's avoid that tonight. I can get him ranting on something else. Here's the 0-2. Fouled at the plate. Dodgers in a good spot here. Andre Ethier at infield hit. Juan Uribe on a hit and run. Lines one into center.
kind of chuckling to myself. Marlins fan 27 says their walk-up song would be "Call Me Maybe," but I'm just thinking after 2 or 3 at-bats, you'd be tired of it already.
0-2 pitch. Busted bat. Morrison steps on the bag. Comes home. Got the runner hung up. Ethier in a rundown. Mathis runs him back. Throws. Got him there. And it's a big double play. Terrific work by Morrison at first and Mathis behind the plate.
Well, that's a heads-up play all around. Heads-up play all around. Logan Morrison was so close to first base. He has to step on the bag. But he elects to go to the plate because he saw Ethier get off the bag. Mathis chases him back and just with one toss gets it to Lucas, who puts the tag on Ethier. All is well. 2 quick outs. Nicely done by the Marlin infield.
And the Marlins are able to walk Fedorovich and pitch to Capuano now.
So the double play goes 3-2-5.
And you could see what Mathis was doing. He did not want Ethier to come back towards the plate. He wanted to make sure that out was made at third. And it turned into a lot closer play than I think Jeff anticipated.
Again, going back to how you have to play against a really good team is that you have to play tight defense, get some clutch base hits. So far, the Marlins have done that.
Wednesday, tomorrow night, Marlins and Dodgers. And, of course, it's time for the Crazy 8 ticket offer from Chevron. Fill up at a participating Chevron to get $8 home run porch or $18 home plate box tickets. Visit your local Chevron or marlins.com/Chevron for details. Restrictions apply. Capuano, first and second. Turner with a fastball that's fouled off. Quinn Walcott, rookie umpire, who's working behind home plate. James Hoy, Jim Reynolds, and the aforementioned John Hirschbeck at third base. No Yasiel Puig tonight for the Dodgers. Don Mattingly saying it was a baseball decision to give him the night off. Although Puig apparently took it a little too literally and showed up late in the Dodgers clubhouse and was fined by the Dodgers manager.
I think Don Mattingly's response to when he was asked how much was the fine, he said more than $1, less than $10,000.
About as much as Puig dropped on South Beach the other night.
I would have let LeBron pick up the tab, though.
Breaking ball in the dirt, and Mathis has to smother it. Well, this is a guy that you want Turner to go get and get right now. You do not want Carl Crawford hitting in this inning. Carlos, now here's a good example of the viewer that wanted to know if we just knew every answer. We don't know this answer. Carlos from Pembroke Pines, who's the last major leaguer to serve in the military. Chopper, Solano to his left, in time to get the out. And the Marlins pull off an enormous double play and somehow keep the Dodgers off the scoreboard. Toyota. Let's go places. By AT&T Uverse TV. Check availability. 1-800-PICK-AT&T. Rethink possible. By Just for Men, Mustache and Beard. And by Checkers. Feast on. Marlins Park tonight. The Marlins lead the Dodgers 1-0 on an email and Twitter Tuesday. Rich Waltz, along with Tommy Hutton, Allison Williams, Craig Minervini, Jeff Conine with us tonight.
I have a good tweet, Rich, from Chris. It's a good question. Who would you rather have on your team? Jose Fernandez or Yasiel Puig?
Without a doubt, Jose Fernandez.
I'm with you 100% on that one. And I think it's because we've had an opportunity not only to see Jose Fernandez pitch, we've had an opportunity to be around him and see how he responds to everything, how he accepts his role, how he understands and gets what he needs to do to be better.
So much discussion last night about Rookie of the Year because you had Ryu pitching for the Dodgers. Marlins beat him. You had obviously Jose Fernandez pitching for the Fish, and you had Yasiel Puig in the house. There's a terrific column on ESPN.com. David Schoenfeld on the Sweet Spot blog, kind of handicapping the Rookie of the Year race after last night's ballgame.
And he had Jose Fernandez, #1.
But he said, check back with me later. It could change. Ethier is there, and he makes the catch because you never know what happens down the stretch. If Puig goes off, and for you, runs off a bunch of great starts. If Julio Teheran from Atlanta goes undefeated the rest of the way.
If Ryu puts together 3 or 4 more wins. Shelby Miller, St. Louis. The tough part, as you and I have talked about, when Jose is shut down, then all of a sudden you hope he doesn't become out of sight, out of mind. And the writers don't forget about it.
We should let him do games with us, just to keep him in the limelight.
Keep him in the mix. Yeah, but then he wouldn't be in the dugout cheering on the ball club.
That's where he belongs. Ruggiano getting the start against Capuano. Marlins got a run in the first. A Yelich double. A grounder to second by Solano moved him to third. Another grounder to second by Stanton scored him. Ruggiano coming off a big weekend series against the Giants. And he bangs that one foul. Capuano turned 34 yesterday. Marlins saw a good deal of him in 2011 when he was in the Mets rotation. Strike 3 called. Down he goes. And he can do that to you. You lean out thinking you're going to get change-up. And he'll bust you in with a fastball. AT&T Uverse brings you the poll question. Does Yasiel Puig need to temper his emotions? Hashtag Puig.
Puig cool it.
Don't write this stuff, all right? Puig cool it. Or hashtag Puig play on. Well, there's no denying he has brought a real spark and a zest for the game to a Dodger team that was stuck in the water and going nowhere fast.
And there's no denying he's a talented player. Extremely talented. But there are things in the game that he needs to kind of channel. He needs to learn to hit cutoff men. We were told, yeah, he's thrown some guys out. You see that when you watch highlights. But there are a lot of times he's thrown to a base, not getting the guy, and a couple of other runners advance. He's been thrown out a few times, numerous times, trying to take an extra base when it wasn't really there for him. You can call that exciting. Some baseball people would call that bad baseball.
Well, I think
there's a fine line.
As long as he's
producing like he's producing and the Dodgers are winning like they're winning, everybody can live with that.
That's right. Exactly.
He has the night off tonight, the 3-2. Change up, popped up. And it's out of play.
See, Rich, you mentioned my iPad, and fans tweet in saying we should chip in and get you one. You have one, too. You just don't mention yours.
Well, because
Rich does have an iPad.
And I'm usually in charge of emails.
You have, yeah.
You're in charge of Twitter. Bouncer out to second. Mark Ellis on to first. And a 1-2-3 inning for Capuano. To the third. 1-0. Williams.
Hey guys, talking about players' walk-up songs tonight, taking suggestions on Twitter for what people say would be their walk-up song, and there are certainly some players throughout baseball, both past and present, that were known for the music that played before they stepped into the batter's box. How about Jason Giambi, whose song goes back to the 90s when he was with the A's? It's actually from a World Championship Wrestling clip called Wolfpack. Chase Utley would always come out to Kashmir from Led Zeppelin. Chipper Jones, if you remember, came out to Crazy Train by Ozzy Osbourne, and when he tried to change it, the fans about went nuts. Of course, JP back in 07-08 came out to Deja Vu, the song by Beyonce and Jay-Z, and you had to because the song said, I used to run bass like Juan Pierre, now I run bass, hi-hat, and a snare was actually in the lyrics. And then Anthony Rizzo, Can't Stop by Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Mark Teixeira, I Wanna Rock by Twisted Sisters. Some good music, good songs that you really kind of equate those jams with those specific players, and keep the tweets coming. We've had some good songs so far that people would choose for their walk-up songs.
Thank you, Allison. Jacob Turner to work in the third. Second time through for the Doyers. Carl Crawford, Mark Ellis, Adrian Gonzalez. Always remember that as a kid growing up in the Bay Area, the bitter rivals between San Francisco and the Dodgers. Tito Fuentes, the fine second baseman.
Oh, yeah.
Orlando Cepeda. Whenever they would talk about the Dodgers, they would say it in a tone of hate. Doyers.
The Doyers.
They were the evil empire. That was, I mean, those were vicious days between the Dodgers and the Giants, of brawls and Marichal.
Yeah, Marichal and John Roseborough. The bat-throwing incident. I think I've told this before, but fans are so used to most every game on television now. Back in the 60s, early, mid to late 60s, the only games the Dodgers televised were when they were in San Francisco. So you always saw, if you grew up in Los Angeles, you saw the Dodger-Giant games.
Jake wants to know, who sits in the glass booth in center field? Not sure. Little tapper. Turner flips over to first.
Great to hear communication. Jeff Mathis, even though Crawford has excellent speed, yelling to Jacob Turner, easy, easy.
Well, there's that booth up there. That's kind of the sound and computer center for the ballpark. We've not been there. We've not met the folks.
We've not been invited up there.
So we don't know who's up there, but they're important.
They seem like nice people.
Mark Ellis takes down low. Ellis flied to right. Dodgers have had opportunities. A 2-out double by Adrian Gonzalez in the first. But Hanley Ramirez popped out to end the inning. And then first and third, and nobody out in the second. Skip Schumacher's ground ball to Logan Morrison turned into a 3-2-5 double play. Morrison stepped on the bag to get Schumacher through home to get Ethier in a rundown. Into right field and a base hit.
Doing much better as far as strikes are concerned, keeping that two-seamer down. Good matchup tomorrow. Zach Greinke, Nathan Eovaldi.
What a lovely night for a ball game at Marlins Park. Fine seat. Dodgers and Marlins. Dodgers hottest team on the planet. Still 42 of 52 they've won despite the Marlins win last night. Ellis away from first. Gonzalez locked and loaded at the plate.
The other thing that they've mixed in, the Dodgers have during this tremendous run, they've played extremely well away from Dodger Stadium. They've won 19 out of 22 on the road.
One of the most amazing stats about the Dodgers, and this is a team packed with big contracts and big stars, guys that have been all-stars many times over. Carl Crawford, a 4-time all-star. Matt Kemp, twice an all-star. Adrian Gonzalez, 4 times an all-star. Ethier, 2 times an all-star. The Dodgers were represented by 1 player on the National League All-Star team. And he starts on Thursday, Clayton Kershaw. It's amazing, but I guess it shows how bad they were in April and May when you get the attention and you get the votes.
They just started their run prior to the All-Star game. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're 4 under 500 against the National League West. But you have to look at when those games were played.
2-0 pitch, a little roller, and it's a foul ball.
I mean, the Dodgers are 5-7 against Arizona, 6-7 against Colorado and San Diego, and just 6-6 against the Giants.
Well, I'm sure their April schedule was loaded with those teams.
So you see that number, but then you have to say, okay, when were a bulk of those games played?
Turner misses down low. Remember his last start, Jacob Turner's ball strike ratio was one of the worst I've ever seen for a pitcher that actually pitched quite well. I mean, he gave up only 2 runs, but he had far more balls than strikes in the start. To left, Yelich in and now over, and he makes the catch.
Well, we've chronicled Jacob Turner in his last 6 starts, a very respectable ERA of 3.78. But during that time, he's 0-3. Support hasn't been there for him. And I don't have to tell you who's coming up.
Hanley Ramirez arrives. Hanley popped out his first time up. And a strike. Melanie out of Port Charlotte to Tommy. Very polite email. Tommy, why do you have a problem with Carlos Marmol?
I would probably have more of a problem had I been a Cubs fan. It's probably a problem out of frustration when you see a guy who has such good stuff and has been able to be around a long time, yet not really ever, with the exception of a few occasions, have command of that stuff.
That pitch goes behind Hanley Ramirez. And not just behind it, but way behind it.
As soon as Hanley dropped that front foot on the ground, he had nowhere to go. That ball also went out of Fox tracks. You don't really laugh at that.
Well, in a 1-0 game, there's no reason for Turner to be throwing at Hanley Ramirez. And I think Ramirez realizes that. That one out of play. And the count's 1-2. If I knew how to apologize in Spanish for that, lo siento, I know, but I need to be a little more specific in my apology. To right, it's well hit. Stanton is there, and he makes the catch. And Jacob Turner gets out of the third. Dodgers leave another. Jacob Turner and the Fish. Let's check in with Craig Minervini.
Rich, it's always nice to see friends of the Marlins, and Mary Robinson, one of our great friends. Her husband, Bill Robinson, the late Bill Robinson, died in 2007, was the Marlins hitting coach in the great years, and the Marlins won the World Championship, and he was so close to the program. It's great to see you.
Thank you. It's good.
We miss your husband, and the late Bill Robinson was a great man.
Thank you very much. It's just nice to be at this new park. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Well, Bill was a guy who really had his impression on the team. He actually had a connection to the Dodgers. He was their minor league hitting instructor and actually died visiting the AAA team in Las Vegas. Your grandson is here.
He's here, Ty. He was 17. Because Ty kind of grew up with the Marlins, and because Bill always had him here, and he loves this team. He has always been a Marlin fan, so I promised him I'd bring him back to see the stadium, and here we are.
It's pretty neat. How about the Marlin years? Because you had obviously great time in baseball when your husband was playing. He was a 3-time world champion himself, an outstanding right-handed power hitter, mostly known for the Pirates. Yeah. But then he had the second career as a coach and wound up with this Marlins organization at a great time.
Right. I mean, life has been good. What can I say? We've had a wonderful time. I miss him, but this is what he did, and I'm so thankful that we had the opportunity to do it as long as we did.
Yeah, we certainly did.
And I might get to do it again if Ty's a ball player.
We want to say hello to you, Ty. You're on the air. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
So you're a baseball player, and where are you playing?
I play for Arsenal, Tri-State Arsenal. It's a showcase team in Northeast.
From the Northeast. And you having a good season?
Yeah, I'm playing well. I'm pitching very well, so we'll see.
All right, the Marlins got a break there. Good to see you.
Hey, thank you.
I want to ask you, what did your grandfather, Bill Robinson, mean to you?
He meant everything. He taught me how to play, and he just taught me how to be a gentleman, I guess. So he's a good guy.
All right. Must have been neat to say, hey, my grandfather played in the major leagues. Thanks a lot.
Hey,
I'm very nice seeing you.
Hey, thank you so very much.
Let's go back to Rich and Tommy.
All right, nice job, Craig. Terrific woman, and Bill Robinson always will be part of the Marlins family.
You know, his baseball life extended. I mean, he had his time with the Pirates, a terrific player in some of those We Are Family teams, and then he was the first base coach for the Mets in that in the famous Mookie Wilson game. And then, of course, the hitting coach with the Marlins in 03.
Turner sets down a bunt, and it's picked up by Uribe, who flips to first in time to get Jacob Turner. Mathis, who had the pop-up that fell for a hit, now resides at second. And the Marlins get into the top of the order now. Yelich and Solano with the runner in scoring position.
So far, the Marlins doing some of the little things correctly. Sacrifice bunt. You saw the nice double play turned. Good sign.
This copyrighted telecast, presented by the authority of the Marlins, may not be reproduced, retransmitted in any form. Accounts, descriptions of this game may not be disseminated without the express written consent of the Marlins. Christian Yelich doubled down the left field line and scored on a Stanton ground ball. That the only run of this ball game. The Dodgers have out hit the Marlins 4-2. Capuano misses down low. For Capuano this season, he's either been really good or he's been knocked around. That's kind of been the rhythm of his season so far. The last two starts, he's given up 10 runs combined. The two starts before, 0 runs combined.
Well, you mentioned in 06 he was an all-star. In 05 he was an 18-game winner with Milwaukee. Just thinking about it, the Dodgers have 2 pitchers now on their staff that have had Tommy John surgery twice.
Roller to third. Uribe across the diamond in time to get Yelich.
And the other would be Brian Wilson now in their bullpen.
That's 2 Tommy John surgeries. There are some guys out there, but to have 2 of them on the same team is... And I think that will increase the number of guys in the big leagues with 2 Tommy John surgeries, because so many pitchers are coming out of college or out of high school and have had Tommy John surgery in high school or in college.
Well, and Brian Wilson, LSU, that's when he had his first.
He really is a very nice guy, and from all accounts around the Giants, a terrific teammate.
Great teammate. He has one of the most intense workout programs that he puts together.
Solano takes outside. Good guy to have at the plate. We told you Solano, with runners in scoring position, has been the Marlins' best this year, and on a real nice run over his last week and a half, 2 weeks. Mathis is the runner at second. 2-0. Soft away and then hard in.
And that's about it for hard in. 88. About tops for Chris Capuano.
Solano to short. Hanley Ramirez gathers it in and throws him out. Then Capuano strands Mathis at second. 3 innings in the books. Miami a 1-0 lead. Finances and the Dodgers, $2.15 billion for the team, Dodger Stadium, and all that came with it, according to the United Nations. The United Nations is often quoted in baseball stories. The gross domestic product of 30 countries. That's more at $2.15 billion. All right, $215 million projected payroll. It's highest in baseball history. $600 million in guaranteed commitments. Of course, they're working on Dodger Stadium, replacing the lower concourse, upgrading the clubhouses. Huge television deal as well has helped fuel that. The Dodgers are starting their own channel in Los Angeles next year, and that will bring untold hundreds of millions of billions. That was what Carl Sagan's favorite line is. The Cleveland Clinic, 4th, 1-0. Miami on top of the Dodgers.
Part of that ownership group. Magic Johnson,
Andre Ethier, Juan Uribe, and Skip Schumacher. Ethier, an infield hit after a rare 0 for last night against Miami. The all-time leading hitter among active players against the Marlins, and he just keeps doing it. So 2 for 2 is Ethier. Here comes Uribe. He had a hit his first time up. I love seeing the Dodger dog just run after that baseball. They used to work on that up at Dodgertown back in the day when Tommy was a Dodger. Thursday, it's Clayton Kershaw's start, 12:40, Subway Restaurant. Get you a voucher for a discounted $5 ticket. All seniors 55 and older can get a complimentary ticket on Senior Ticket Thursdays, presented by Wellmax Medical Center. It's one thing they're not renovating at Dodger Stadium, and that is the Dodger Dog. Farmer John's. It's one of our favorite things to do at Dodger Stadium is get to the ballpark early, get to the television booth, and listen to Vin Scully voice the billboards and do the Farmer John's.
Brings back a lot of memories.
I'm sure, Tommy, as a young ball player growing up in Pasadena, that you demanded in your lunches Farmer John meats, cold cuts, and the finest cheeses.
The pork sausage was always good.
Uribe, broken bat, and another base hit for Uribe. Unbelievable. 5 hits for Uribe already.
this year against the Marlins, he had a pinch hit base hit out in L.A. He's 9 for 10. So the Marlins can't get Juan Uribe out, even when he breaks his bat.
Well, this was an issue for the Marlins in the second. Uribe and Ethier. Although in the second, Ethier was at third because Uribe's hit came on a hit and run. And Schumacher was up. And you thought for certain the Dodgers were going to score. Schumacher, a broken back grounder to first. Morrison stepped on the bag and Ethier got caught between third and home. Miami got a double play. And then Turner got out of the inning without giving up a run. Turner falls behind at 2-0. As far as control goes, a little better for Turner. But his ball strike ratio, Tommy, still is troubling for Chuck Hernandez and Mike Redmond. Look at this.
And it's one of the reasons, Rich, why he has not struck anybody out tonight, and why in Kansas City in his 5 innings he did not strike anybody out. You have to have command to get ahead, and then when you get ahead, you can put some hitters away and pick up some strikeouts. Now, he's not a guy who's going to strike out 10 or 12 all the time, but he is someone who can strike hitters out.
Solano, Echeverria, double play. And so Turner makes a perfect pitch. Schumacher on a 2-0 pitch bounces into a double play, and again Turner is on the verge of getting out of it.
Let's see if they put Fedorovich on again the way they did last time. This is pretty tailor-made. Solano to Echeverria, pretty routine 4-6-3, and it's just a huge couple of outs. When needed, he's got Schumacher to hit into a double play. This one a little more conventional.
And the Marlins will intentionally walk him. So Fedorovich is thinking, hey, I get to start once every 5 days, and they won't pitch to me. He is the personal catcher for Chris Capuano. Mike Redmond said it best on Marlins Live against this lineup, and he was contrasting it to Turner's start against a very good Kansas City team his last time out. Jacob Turner cannot walk anybody because this lineup will bury you if you do.
Well, so far so good. The 2 walks have been intentional to set up situations where he's pitching to Capuano. Capuano on the season 1 for 21.
So at the corners again, Capuano bounced to Solano to finish off the second. The Diamondbacks, who are 7.5 behind the Dodgers, are in Cincinnati. 2-0 to Capuano.
Yeah, the key to this whole move is that Turner has to throw strikes to Capuano, or he puts himself in a position facing Carl Crawford with bases loaded if he loses Capuano.
Diamondbacks lead the Reds 1-0 in the 4th. I think that's for a guy that has a 2.89 ERA, you got to be pretty pleased, and this is his 15th start. But one of the troubling things in his last few starts is his tendency to just lose the plate. You see the run on that. Now he's 3-1 with Crawford on deck. He's thrown 62 pitches, and it's split down the middle, 31 balls and 31 strikes. And he really makes a big mistake. He walks Capuano. And here comes Crawford, and here comes Chuck Hernandez, Miami's pitching coach. Rhythm was something that Hernandez talked about before the ball game. He felt that in his last few starts, Jacob Turner had lost his.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, you pointed out, with all the pitches, it limits the number of innings that Jacob Turner can give you. But he's pitched as most of the Marlins starters have. He's pitched very well here at home. 3-0, an ERA of 2.34 at Marlins Park. He's not won a game on the road, 0-4 away from Miami.
Crawford is flied out and bounced back to the mound. It's a 1-0 lead, but a tenuous lead right now because Turner can't throw strikes. The bags are loaded, and Carl Crawford is at the plate. And finding that rhythm is, I mean, it's a lot harder than just getting a new walk-up song. Off his glove, Solano, and he's not going to get anyone. The Dodgers have tied it. Crawford an infield hit. Solano was breaking to the bag. Turner deflected the ball, and there's no way you're going to get Crawford on a play like that.
Hard to say if he lets that ball go what happens. Because, number one, of Crawford's speed. If he lets it go, Solano gets it, might have a chance to get the out at second base because Capuano was going from first to second. But once it was deflected, there's a base hit all the way.
Strike to Ellis. Well, Turner certainly has not helped himself in this spot. The Dodgers bounced into a double play. He was facing the pitcher with 2 outs and walked him on a 3-1 pitch. Now Crawford's infield hit has tied the game. It's filled with Dodgers. Fedorovich, Capuano, and Crawford. Bouncer up the middle. That's trouble. Echeverria to first. It gets by Morrison. Here comes another runner to the plate. And the Dodgers have 2. And it all goes back to Jacob Turner walking the pitcher with 2 outs. You open the door, as Mike Redmond told us, the Dodgers will bury you.
Well, it's so frustrating. This time it might have been better served if he feels that. I don't think he could have. Ball bounces over his head. The only chance for Echeverria is to first base. Tries to one-hop it. The ball gets by Logan Morrison, who's got to reach out a little bit more for it. It'll probably be an error for Echeverria. Base hit, an RBI, and an E6.
And a 3-1 ball game. And now Gonzalez with runners at the corners.
And too many mistakes in this 1 inning.
Crawford 90 feet away. Ellis over at first. And Turner down low. You just can't pitch in the big leagues and throw as many balls as strikes. It just can't work for you week in and week out. Gonzalez swings and misses. His last start, Turner threw 13 fewer strikes than balls.
Archimedes Caminero starts to get loose. Saw him make his Major League debut the other night.
Gonzalez and Solano won't get that one. And the Dodgers have another run.
Dodgers have 9 base hits already. But when you have trouble throwing strikes and staying in the strike zone, it all goes back to mechanics and repeating your delivery. And right now that's been an issue for Jacob Turner.
Then you end up throwing pitches right down the middle like he did to Gonzalez. And obviously a decorated hitter like Gonzalez is going to jump on that, and he did. And here's Hanley Ramirez.
All 4 runs have scored with 2 out. So he had that option. After that double play that Schumacher hit into, he had the chance. Intentional walk and then pitching to Capuano. But the walk to the pitcher dug a big hole for him.
And he walked him on a 3-1 count. 0-1 pitch coming to Hanley Ramirez. 2 good sliders for strikes. And look how far out of the zone both those pitches were.
And that's exactly where he has to go again.
Big inning for the Dodgers. 5 hits in the inning. Pair of walks, 1 intentional. Echeverria, nice pick. Great play. Gets the out at second. But Jacob Turner's walk to Chris Capuano with 2 outs proves costly. Visit your Honda dealer for great lease finance deals on fuel-efficient Hondas and by Coventry Healthcare of Florida, lighting the way to better health. A couple mistakes by a young pitcher have proved costly. Look at that.
That might be a mistake there.
We check in with Allison Williams. Hey, Dub.
Hey, guys. Giancarlo Stanton getting set to lead off the bottom of the 4th here. And for him, he's got 2 specific walk-up songs that he chose for very specific reasons.
One's Versace by Drake, and the other is Click Remix by, has a bunch of Rick Ross and Rocky Fresh. I picked them because our walk-up songs are more like songs you hear on the radio, and you know, every time it comes on, you're like dancing in your car and stuff like that. But also not a song that you want to listen to all the time because you walk up to it, you know, so you can't get sick of it, and you can't listen to it too much. So it's that happy medium, for me at least.
Giancarlo, I love what he said, that it's got to be a song that you like, but you don't like too much, that you don't hear too much, because it's got to, as soon as you hear it, kind of get you in that mind frame, that mentality to step into the batter's box and be ready to hit. And for him, those are the 2 songs he uses. Changes them every year, though.
And probably stays up nights worrying about which song to select. Actually, I don't think so. I think any song would work for Stanton. And whatever he's been doing of late has been working. Stanton comes to the plate. 4-1, Dodgers on top. They get all 4 in the top of this inning. Stanton drove in the Marlins' only run with a ground ball out to second back in the first.
Yeah, Giancarlo's homered 2 of the last 3 games.
Blasts one to left. Crawford over on a hop. And Stanton is aboard. So a leadoff hit here in the 4th, and here comes Morrison.
He's homered. He's been selective. Right there, that pitch, Capuano just has to be pleased it's only a single. Because if Stanton had gotten under that, it would have been a long way out of here.
It is an email Twitter Tuesday. Obviously, the contest is here handling the walk-up songs, but a lot of fans have been offering their walk-up songs. Rachel saying that Hanley Ramirez's walk-up song here should be Somebody That I Used to Know. It's very creative. Evan would say Gangnam Style. Tommy's walk-up song now is Gingham Style.
And I had a tweet from Justin. He wants to know the update on Marcell Ozuna.
should be ready to go in winter ball.
Yeah, the good thing, I saw Ozuna today, talked to him briefly. He had the splint off the thumb and was doing some exercises with a rubber ball to strengthen that tendon in the area. So that was good news just to see that.
Toyota trend. Logan Morrison doubled the fun. In August, 8 of the 21 hits, doubles. 9 is his career best month, and that was September of 11. Morrison bounced to first, back in the first. Chris Capuano, Logan Morrison on an 0-2 count with Stanton at first. And Morrison pulls one through the hole and into right field. Stanton around second, and he's headed for third, and he will get there. And so the Marlins trying to answer back here in the 4th inning.
A couple of good things with Giancarlo to go first to third. Great hitting by Logan Morrison, again off the left-hander. Stanton realizing Schumacher's out there. He's got a guy who's, doesn't really have a right fielder's arm, and so he takes advantage of that. Yasiel Puig's out there. He may think differently, but number one, he got a good jump. Took a peek over his shoulder after the ball almost clipped him. A good job by Giancarlo.
Ed Lucas, Miami trying to bounce back after the Dodgers took the wind right out of their sails. Marlins had a 1-0 lead in the bottom of the first, held it until the 4th here in the top inning. The Dodgers pushed across 4. Lucas takes down low. Thinking backwards is the way you have to approach a guy like Capuano. You hear hitting coaches talk about it. Managers talk about it.
Well, the Dodgers know one thing. The Marlins can put together a few runs with their 3 runs on 4 consecutive hits in the 8th inning last night.
Smartest guys in baseball. Mark DeRosa went to the Wharton Business School. How about that? Got a couple of Princeton guys, young and venerable. I think everyone feels like Ross Ohlendorf is at the top. Craig Breslow probably second.
Look at his major, molecular biophysics.
But you got Capuano here, Duke, and Lucas from Dartmouth. And 2 knuckleheads like us up in the booth.
That's why we're here. It's one thing the Marlins have improved on. They've started to score a little bit. 26 runs, 6.5 runs a game, last 4 games.
I thought you were going to say their SAT scores.
SAT, and they get a little bit higher.
Capuano throws a strike, and it's 3-1 now. Got the big bats at the corner. Stanton at third, Morrison at first, Lucas, Ruggiano, and Echeverria. There's Ruggiano waiting on deck. Capuano has handled both Lucas and Ruggiano. 3-1 is a ball. And Lucas is aboard. And now Miami's got the bags loaded.
That's the first walk issued by Capuano tonight. That'll bring Rick Honeycutt to the mound, the Dodgers' longtime pitching coach.
On Twitter, Mark Hockman, best walk-up song is Anything by Hall & Oates. There are some players that will, just for the heck of it, throw some odd stuff in there. Justin Bieber, Miley Cyrus, something that you wouldn't expect. Cameron Maven used to come in to Party in the USA. Tommy said on the pregame show that his walk-up song would be something Bruce Springsteen.
I would go Springsteen, maybe even take another step and go AC/DC somehow.
Ruggiano swings and misses.
Who would you go with? Would you go grunge, a little Seattle?
Probably Pearl Jam.
A little Pearl Jam, okay. A lot of guys go Pearl Jam.
Maybe you too.
Yeah, it'd be tough to have like a walk-up song to like a Jackson Browne or something.
Some sorrowful. Here's the 0-1. And it's in. All right, Ruggiano in a spot. And this is where facing Capuano can be a challenge because, I mean, you're all amped up. The bags are loaded. There's nobody out. You're looking for something to drive. And Capuano is going to throw that dead fish changeup.
Yeah, he feeds off that.
He wants that over-aggressive attitude. 1-1. There's the changeup and a roller to third. Uribe gets one there. The relay to first, not nearly in time. Miami gets a run. The Dodgers get an out, and it's 4-2.
Well, good job because it backed Uribe up, it got Morrison over to third. Ellis gets a low throw from Uribe. Tough to turn two that way, and Ruggiano just beat the throw, so he gets the RBI. Marlins get a run in and also get Morrison to third.
However, with one out, and you noted this last night when the Dodgers were looking for a double play, the Dodgers actually intentionally walked Ed Lucas to get to Adeiny Echeverria, and they got a double play. And Echeverria has hit into an armload of double plays this year.
17 to be exact. Not this time, though.
Hammers it to left. Morrison will score, and it's a one-run game. And Capuano made a mistake. He left the pitch up and in, and Echeverria jumped on it.
The struggles that Echeverria has had, we tried to point it out a little bit last night, hitting into double plays, is that he gets himself in situations where he has to hit the pitcher's pitch. Well, he jumped on that hanging breaking ball, didn't waste any time, knew he wasn't going to hit this one on the ground.
Mathis, swing and a miss. 76-mile-an-hour changeup.
Nice job by the Marlins, though, here in this inning to come back after the Dodgers put up a 4 spot in the top half.
Oh, and 2 to Mathis. Funny you should mention Seattle. It is the Seattle organization that was probably the first to actually do walk-up songs.
And you pointed out Ken Griffey Jr.
They have a very creative marketing department in Seattle and always have. That went off the end of the bat. They've always been on the cutting edge up there. Their television commercials, their in-game promotions. And so I know when Michael Jackson long ago was a pitcher up there, they played Thriller. But when Griffey arrived, that's when things really started popping. And that's when the walk-up songs really took flight. Fedorovich smothers that changeup in the dirt. 1-2. Mathis in the air, right center field. Ethier trudges after it. Makes the catch. Runners tag, and only one advances. And that's Ruggiano from second to third. But the pitcher's coming up, Jacob Turner. I will say this. As far as pitchers at bats go, an at bat against Capuano for a guy like Turner, who's an inexperienced hitter, is a lot more comfortable than Ryu or Bumgarner, the other two lefties the Marlins have faced the last 2 days.
Well, that's right. You know he's not going to overpower you with a 95-mile-an-hour fastball.
Simeon tweets. Turner takes ball one. Rant time. Tommy, what are your thoughts on Ryan Dempster getting suspended for his beating of A-Rod?
He was probably needed. I mean, he needed to be suspended, but I'm sure he expected it. The note I saw, though, he's five-day suspension or 5-game, whatever it is. But during that time, the Red Sox have 2 off days, so they won't really even need him as their 5th starter to throw. So they're really not going to miss out.
He loses 5 days' pay.
Yeah.
There wasn't any question.
At least he's going to serve probably his suspension. Of course, then again, he could appeal it.
There was no question that he was throwing at him.
Oh yeah, there's no question. You know, and I think, my opinion, if a pitcher feels it, because of the whole situation, the whole A-Rod thing, if he feels he wants to do that, that's his choice. I mean, he puts his team in jeopardy, though, because as it turned out, A-Rod would homer, the Yankees would have a big inning. But you know, it's your personal opinion.
2-1 coming. That one fouled off. See, Simeon was looking for a rant, and he got a thoughtful discussion from Tommy Hutton.
Ryan Dempster is one of our favorite former Marlins.
Two coming. Turner with a soft ground ball. Capuano spears it, flips it. Miami gets 2 runs back in the bottom of the 4th. 4-3 Dodgers after 4. We're back after this sports injury prevention message from Cleveland Clinic, Florida. an easy segue to the Judge from Ed Mustache and Beard Play Like a Champ profile. Jose Fernandez, strikeouts at Marlins Park. 17 games, he's already at 85. Actually, 12 games at 85. I was up on Josh Johnson's line. Look at Ricky Nolasco, who is here but not pitching in this series.
Yeah, good to talk to Ricky.
Yes, he was in a great mood yesterday. Nolasco pitched well in Philly before the Dodgers get here for this 4-game set. Let's check in with Allison Williams. Hey, Dub.
Well, guys, Dodgers legend Vince Scully not on the road trip here as he has scaled back on the road games he has done in recent years, but spirit very much alive, of course, whenever the Dodgers are around, and also on Twitter. Now, it's not actually his Twitter account. It is a fan tribute to him, and he'll a lot of times quote different calls from Vince Scully. There you have it. Amidst all the madness, there's magic, and the Dodgers have now won 8 straight, 13 out of 14, 40-8, 12 straight series. It's kind of a fun follow. In fact, it's so popular. At Vince Scully tweet has over 15,000 followers in Dodger Nation, and very cool because he will actually give direct quotes, and you can just kind of hear Vince's voice in some of the tweets. So while he's too old school to get on Twitter himself, he is there in a fan tribute to Vince Scully.
Is it his producer Boyd that does that?
It could be. Hey, Allison, real quick, we have an assignment for you.
Okay.
Because Kim tweeted in, how many buckets of bubble gum and bags of sunflower seeds do the Marlins go through during one game?
That is a good question.
It depends on if Jeff Mathis goes bananas. Remember the night he threw the gum and the seeds?
Yeah, they've always got a couple in there at least. And, they'll hand them out to fans and stuff, too. And sunflower seeds make their way around. I'll have to do some investigating for that, but I'm going to get back to you on it.
Hey, also, talking about that faux Vin Scully Twitter account, real life, Felo Ramirez tomorrow night is going to be tweeting. So, hey, Felo's getting into the new school. He's going to be answering some tweets. That'll be tomorrow night.
Well, tonight
he has to have a little energy, have a little extra food.
Tonight, is not going to last very long for Jacob Turner if he doesn't start throwing strikes. The Marlins really can't afford to have him hanging out like this. Echeverria got it out there, and a loud double play is just what Turner needed. After walking Ethier to lead off the inning, he gets his third double play ball of the night, and that essentially is keeping Turner in this game.
Absolutely right. That ball was scalded. We talked about Uribe, how he's hit the ball the last 2 nights. He hit this one as hard as any of them, but it was picked by Echeverria, which is nicely done. He scoops it, just cups it in, funnels it, and gives Solano a real nice feed.
Well, Skip Schumacher has bounced into 2 of the double plays.
He's just happy to be up there with nobody on base.
This is crazy. I mean, Turner has thrown 82 pitches, 41 balls, and 41 strikes.
And he's in the game. It's a 1-run game.
How does a pitcher do that?
We talked about his last outing. 6 walks, no strikeouts. In his 5 innings, and gave up just 2 runs, 1 earned.
And Jacob will be the first to tell you that you can't survive doing that. He pumps in a strike, and it's 3-1. That was the oddity of his last start. 5 innings, 2 runs. He walked 6. And now he walks Schumacher. But you have to have good stuff to overcome that, and he does have good stuff. But
as indicated by the double plays that have been turned.
And here's Fedorovich, who finally gets to swing the bat. He was intentionally walked in the 2nd and in the 4th. It worked in the 2nd. Chris Capuano, the pitcher, bounced out to end the inning, but it didn't work in the 4th. When Turner couldn't throw strikes to Capuano, and the Dodgers would proceed from that point to score 4 runs with 2 outs. It's a 4-3 Dodger lead. Fedorovich, as we told you, a North Carolina guy. And Turner nearly hits him. Whatever it is, it's not right. Chuck Hernandez talked about rhythm, and you could just tell from facial expression, body language, that Turner is really searching right now. End of the bat, and it rolls fair, and it rolls by Morrison. Down the line it goes. Stanton picks it up on one of the crazier balls you'll see hit off the end of the bat. It kicked back into fair territory, and Morrison essentially overran the ball.
Well, and at no fault of his. This ball had so much spin. Logan Morrison goes over to field it right here to backhand it, and it spun completely the other way and goes over the bag. Right now he thinks this ball is going to be in foul territory, and it goes the other direction. That ball fools any first baseman.
And so here,
and a crazy night gets crazier.
And here is Turner in that same spot again, with Capuano at the plate. Capuano a ground ball. Solano has it and makes the play to first in time to leave 2. Turner survives the 5th. 4-3 Dodgers. Rockies on top of the Phillies. Arizona has that early run still holding up in Cincinnati. Arizona 7.5 behind these Dodgers. Cardinals a lead in Milwaukee. Washington leading the Cubs, but Donnie Murphy hasn't come to the plate yet. Murphy hit 2 home runs. 2 more home runs last night. Chris Capuano has a 4-3 lead for the Dodgers, bottom of the 5th. Emails and tweets tonight. If you want to get us through email, go to foxsportsflorida.com and then go to the Marlins page. Click on Game Connect. Once you're there, I know it's a few hoops to jump through. Then go to Ask the Broadcasts on Twitter at Fox Marlins. Hashtag walk-up song if you're into the walk-up songs tonight.
I got one for you, Rich. A Marlins fan wants to know, past or present, which broadcaster, baseball broadcaster, would you like to meet? Past or present?
Well, I think we've met all the present ones.
Yeah, we have, which is a great luxury of our job.
So we would have to go to a past baseball broadcasters. It's a luxury for both you and I to have met Vin Scully, since you grew up listening to him, and I heard him in California as well. Yelich at the plate.
You know, in the late 80s, I had the opportunity to work with Hank Greenwald and do a couple of years of Yankees games, and many times got the opportunity to meet and talk with Mel Allen.
What about Phil Rizzuto?
Yeah.
See, I never got a chance to meet Phil Rizzuto.
Scooter was there. So that was fun for me.
Capuano working on Yelich. You got Solano and Stanton to follow. Broken bat, and it almost gets Capuano, who didn't see the barrel of the bat. Barely out at first is Yelich. Capuano was focused on the ball, and the bat ended up behind Capuano. He picked up the barrel of the bat, and he'll bring it in.
Yeah, he turned to look at the direction of the ball out towards short, and he didn't see the barrel of the bat coming at him. See, he turns, boy, and the bat goes right over the pitching rubber.
If I had to pick one guy, I'd go Dizzy D, just because of all the funny stuff he said.
There you go. That's a good choice.
Fastball misses up. Solano has bounced out twice. Marlins got 2 runs in the 4th, a run in the 1st. Capuano, with all the slow stuff, will still get an 89-mile-an-hour fastball by you. Chris Withrow in the Dodger bullpen. Dodger bullpen has been really, really good on this stretch of games in which the Dodgers have dominated all of baseball. Here's the 1-2. Look out. Up and in. Bob in Miami. Speaking of walk-up songs, I miss the organist from years ago who used to play at Marlin games. Sometimes,
Dick Jans.
Sometimes they were obvious, like the theme for Andy Griffith for John Mayberry. Sometimes not so much, like the theme from MASH when Mark Loretta came to the plate. That was creative. On a hop, Hanley has it, straightens up, and throws out Donovan Solano. Pair of ground balls to Hanley Ramirez, and Giancarlo Stanton comes up.
It's amazing the way this game has gone, that both starting pitchers are still in there.
Stanton arrives. He's a slugger, certainly. Casey from Alaska's email wants to know about the chances the Marlins sign another slugger, and that's Cuban slugger Jose Abreu. He seems to be the latest Cuban star to come on the market. He has escaped, or I guess defected from the Cuban national team. They're not quite sure where he is right now, but he's no longer in Cuba, and he can absolutely crush, Tommy. I saw him for 3 weeks over in Japan.
They wonder, some scouts wonder about a position for him.
First base designated hitter.
Yeah. So maybe an American League team, it would be a good sign.
He can definitely hit. Big guy, big strong guy. Stanton drives one in the gap. That ball's going to get to the wall in a hurry. It whistles by everybody. Against the fence. Stanton with a loud double. And he's really locked in now. 4 hits in this series. A 7-game hit streak. And both of his hits, the single to left and this double, were right on the button.
You see that solid, and for a big man, compact is his swing. Balance is there, great distribution of his weight, and just a solid foundation. Yeah, we do too.
So here is Morrison to face Capuano.
Wait, they had Dodger signs too. They had Marlins and Dodger signs.
Well, the family split right down the middle, so they shared the sign. Ball in the dirt. Lee from West Palm Beach. Doesn't Chris Capuano have a dad or a brother who's an umpire who cannot umpire games in which he is pitching? His first major league game Lee in West Palm Beach. It was 1936. He said Pirates at Old Forbes Field. He says he's an old fart. Actually, you're thinking of Randy Wolf, another soft-tossing lefty. His brother is Jim Wolf.
Jim Wolf.
Major League umpire. He cannot umpire a game behind the plate in which his brother pitches.
He can be in the crew. He can be on one of the bases, but not behind the plate.
Off the bat, 106 miles per hour.
I think the fan may be thinking of retired umpire, one of our favorites, Ed Rapuano. not Capuano.
That's probably right there. Eddie Rapp does not umpire when Chris Kapp comes to town. Ed Rapp is on the DL, isn't he? Breaking ball. Morrison hits it to center. Ethier in and back and there and makes the catch. Stanton left out there. Through 5, a 1-run Dodger lead. Craig Minervini. Craig?
Rich, thank you very much. 1 year ago today, you may remember the Marlins were in Arizona, and Jeff Vergellis and umpire Jim Joyce happened to be in the right spot at the right time for Jane Powers, who was going through cardiac arrest.
Complete cardiac arrest.
And they were there, Jim Joyce first issuing the umpire CPR.
Correct.
And then Jeff got involved too, the Marlins bullpen catcher.
Correct, both of them.
And 1 year later, you came back to say hello because she works for the Arizona Diamondbacks at Chase Field. And tell me about. I mean, the odds are not very good when you have a cardiac arrest away from a hospital.
That is correct. There's only 5% of the people that make it to the hospital alive. And to think that I went out 3 times at the stadium and twice more on the way to the hospital, I'm a true miracle.
What about seeing Jeff today?
Seeing Jeff, oh my gosh, I still get chills. I'm getting chills right now. Every time I get a text from Jim Joyce, anytime I ever hear their names, I just get chills. And I thank God that, God put them right there at the right place at the right time for me.
And you had no history?
No history, nothing at all. My heart is still healthy. Unfortunately, I had an electrical issue that put me into cardiac arrest.
But you're doing much better now, we hear?
100%, here I am.
And got a chance, a thrill for any baseball fan. You got to throw out, that must have been neat, the first pitch to Jeff Vergellis.
That's correct. I wish I had a better arm, but, it made it there. Eventually, it made it there.
More importantly, you have a better heart.
Correct. My heart's working. That's all that matters.
Gene, it's great to see 1 year ago today. Wow, what happened to you, and those guys were there to help save your life.
Both of them. I thank them every single day.
Nice to see you here.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's Jane Powers, guys. Back to you.
All right, Craig, yeah, we remember that night quite well in Arizona. Archimedes Caminero coming out of the bullpen.
Yeah, we saw him the other night make his major league debut, and the impressive thing was that Archimedes threw strikes. Good slider, good hard fastball.
And he gets the top of the order. Carl Crawford with a 2-2 pitch. Little tapper. Mathis has to hurry, and he overthrows Morrison. Crawford kind of stumbled a bit crossing the bag, and he jogs back to first.
Part of that is because of Crawford's speed. Jeff Mathis had to really try to hurry that throw across his body. Would have been a tough play for Caminero. It's going to be a base hit. You see how kind of has to sling it from the hip. So a base hit. Second infield base hit for the speedy Carl Crawford. Rich, we love it when crack staffers all over the country check in with information that we have proven we don't always know. And we mentioned one of our favorites, Ed Rapuano. Eddie's working with MLB as a minor league evaluator, and I remember seeing him. He had a lot of shoulder problems and issues, surgery, and that really forced an early retirement for him. So he's still active, though, working with Major League Baseball, evaluating minor league umpires.
Mark Ellis just got dusted off by Archimedes Caminero. Called up from Jacksonville a few days ago. Major League debut against the Giants, a scoreless inning. Was closing some in Jacksonville.
The Dodgers have had base runners every inning.
Just checking on baseballreference.com for Major League players with the first name Archimedes. There was a utility infielder in the 90s named Archimedes Pozo. Pozo 95, 96, 97, Seattle, and then 2 years with Boston. But Archimedes Caminero, there have been plenty of minor leaguers like Archimedes Lorenzo, but only 2 Archimedes have reached the big leagues or discovered the big leagues. Striking, it's 3-2. We'll see if Carl Crawford, one-time base stealing demon, who has slowed down a bit of late, will be on the move. Crawford over 440 career stolen bases. Full count, nobody out. Crawford's running, and a fly ball to left. Yelich in, and he makes the catch. 1-run game here in the 6th. 1 out now in the Dodger half of the inning. Marlins and Rockies open their series on Friday night, and it's a fireworks Friday. The Sir Pizza 4-pack includes 4 tickets, 4 personal Sir Pizzas, 4 Pepsi soft drinks for just $60. Stay in your seats after the game. Enjoy a fireworks spectacular presented by Bacardi. Marlins.com, the place to go for tickets. Now Adrian Gonzalez with Crawford still at first. On an email Twitter Tuesday, we generally don't have time to peruse what's going on in Major League Baseball. Biggest news of the night. Ichiro is 1 hit away from 4,000, Tommy Hutt, in his lifetime. swing and a miss.
It's well, it's impressive. You know that. He's been a great hitter. He was in Japan, and he has been here.
Ichiro did not get that hit today in the first game. Yankees beat the Blue Jays 8-4. Throw to first.
First game, it was all Robinson Cano. It was 4 for 4 with a 3-run homer.
And Ichiro is not in the lineup in the second game. Oh, 1 pitch. Outside corner.
By the way, the Marlins got a little break on the 3-2 pitch to Ellis with Crawford running. Got a pretty good jump. Ellis probably swung at ball 4. They hit the fly ball out to left field.
Oh, 2. Lucas out of Coconut Creek emails. Everyone's talking about National League rookies and who will win the Rookie of the Year. What about the American League, Tommy Hunt? Who is your American League Rookie of the Year?
Well, I'd have to peruse a list of candidates. I would like to zero in on Will Myers if he gets a few more ABs.
Ground ball by Morrison and into right field. Turning and heading to third is Crawford. And the Dodgers have at the corners now Crawford and Gonzalez.
Boy, third base hit tonight for Adrian Gonzalez.
Sports and Highlight Show you've been waiting for is here. Fox Sports Live. Jay on right, Dan O'Toole, joined by Donovan McNabb, Gary Payton, Andy Roddick, and Carissa Thompson. Everything you need to know about the world of sports and the day and the night in sports. Fox Sports Live airs nightly on Fox Sports 1.
With the rookie Nick Franklin, he's having a pretty good year. Will Myers, I like Will Myers. At the top of most of the offensive categories.
Hanley, another double play. Yes, the Marlins have turned 4 in the ball game. Amazing. And then Ramirez goes 6-4-3, and it's still, despite 12 Dodger hits and an armload of walks, a 1-run game. By all accounts, this is a ball game that the Marlins should not be in, but they are, thanks to 4 double plays. This is our walk-up song, apparently. Ed Lucas pulls one foul. Brandon League has entered the ball game for the Dodgers. League, a former closer. Kenley Jansen has had that job for the last couple of years.
Brandon League becomes a very high-priced 6th inning guy right now.
Lucas swings and misses.
A guy who's always had tremendous stuff. Good sinking fastball, 94 plus. Got a split that he likes to use for an out pitch.
You think about the raw numbers in this game. The Dodgers have a 1-run lead, but they have 12 hits. Miami has just 6.
How about this? The last 3 innings alone, the Dodgers have had 12 base runners and have hit into 3 double plays.
4 double plays overall. Jacob Turner, the Marlins starter, 5 innings, 5 walks, 10 hits, 4 runs, 3 earned. He didn't strike anyone out. Turner, in his last, 2 starts, has walked 11 and struck out no one in 10 innings combined. Now, a couple of the walks were intentional tonight.
Boy, that'll beat up that walks to strikeouts ratio.
Luciano takes a strike. And the count's 1-1.
Earlier in the year, before League was really struggling, he had 14 saves. But as you mentioned, Rich, Kenley Jansen has taken over that role.
Luciano bangs it into center field. That's a base hit. And the Marlins have a runner aboard. They've got Echeverria, Mathis, and then the pitcher spot coming up. Tommy, you gave Allison Williams.
I did.
A homework assignment. Oftentimes, Tommy has Allison do his homework for him, but this time, Allison, what'd you find out? I guess the question was, how many buckets of bubble gum and sunflower seeds do the Marlins go through on a nightly basis?
So Kim tweeted asking that, and according to my sources, it is 2 boxes of assorted seeds and a 2-pound bucket of the bubble gum, and that's per team. So it's a lot of bubble gum and a lot of sunflower seeds. Every night, 2 pounds of the bubble gum per team, and then a whole big box of the sunflower seeds. So there you go. There's your answers. I'm off the hook for my homework for the night.
Well, maybe a follow-up assignment would be who has to sweep up the seeds and the wrappers after the game.
And Rich, you and I have to fess up. Every once in a while, you and I, if we swing by that bucket, we'll pocket a couple of pieces of double bubble. Hey, this is a situation so many times. We talked about it. 17 grounded into double plays for Echeverria. Wouldn't be surprised to see Ruggiano on the move. No, if you want to try to stay out of the double play, put a play on. Remember, Etch had a real good swing last time up for a base hit, single to left field.
Mike Redmond watching intently. Ruggiano, a good base runner, and a good base stealer. Now, the other day, remember, Ed Lucas was at first, and Ruggiano was at second, and he broke for third and then stopped midway. And you said to yourself, we got to find out what happened. Did someone miss a sign? And
yeah.
It was something you wouldn't expect.
No, there wasn't a play on. It wasn't a hit and run. Ruggiano was on his own. He took off, and after 3 or 4 steps, his foot came out of his shoe. The heel came out. And so he stopped.
2-0 pitch is down low. That's something we didn't consider. Watch his shoe. There it is.
Yeah, right there. You see it on the right foot. Now, the problem, he had told Ed Lucas, I'm going on the first pitch. So as soon as Lucas saw him move, he took off. That's why we always like to ask, because you never know.
Meanwhile, Brandon Lee walks Adeiny Echeverria, and the Dodgers certainly can't be pleased with that. Dan Jennings is in the bullpen. Dodger bullpen has a lefty up, and that's probably in case J.P. Howell is back up.
Well, that would be
to prevent a Greg Dobbs who might pinch hit in the next at bat. Rick Honeycutt in the modern day bullpen. Tony La Russa was the architect with Dennis Eckersley. Rick Honeycutt was the first, I guess, bona fide 8th inning guy. Honeycutt was the setup man for Eck in Oakland for a nice, long, and very successful stretch. And he's had a nice, long run as the Dodger pitching coach.
Yeah, Rick Honeycutt in his 8th year with the Dodgers as their pitching coach had a playing career over 20 years. I mean, he served many roles. You talk about the 8th inning role with the Athletics, but early in his career, a starting pitcher.
Now Mathis for a big at bat. Ruggiano at second, Echeverria at first, and Dobbs is on deck. Strike. This is a case where the Dodgers have let the Marlins hang around in this ball game. It's a 1-run lead for Los Angeles, and the Marlins have an opportunity to make that hurt. Just like that, Mathis behind the count, 0-2.
It's the type of game, you're right, when you're able to hang around a game that you know you should be well out of, you'd like to take advantage, but neither team with runners in scoring position has lit it up tonight.
Liner to left field, that's a base hit. Ruggiano around third and coming home, and the Marlins have done just that. They've tied the game. Jeff Mathis has 2 hits and another big RBI.
Boy, a mistake by Lee. We talked about his splitter, but the split didn't split. Just kind of rolled up there. And Jeff Mathis with a nice swing with 2 strikes on him into left field. Ruggiano scored easily. Crawford wasn't going to throw him out. And it's back to square one.
And it's back to the bullpen for Don Mattingly. And he's on his way out. He's got the lefty Howell ready. The Marlins have announced Dobbs as a pinch hitter. With runners first and second, Dobbs will be facing the former Tampa Bay Ray. And the Marlins have tied it at 4. Metro PCS called to the pen. Marlins winners last night 6-2. They've hung around and tied it. J.P. Howell, the 30-year-old, native of Sacramento, pitched at a pair of big-time schools, University of Texas and USC. Pitched for the Rays for 6 years.
Yeah, we talked about his success with the Rays, but he did not have success last night. Came in the 8th inning, faced 3 batters, and gave up 3 hits. Was tagged for a couple of runs.
So Dobbs against the lefty. And Dobbs fouls it back.
A lot of time, this is always good for fans to file this away. When you see Greg Dobbs go up there, a lot of times he's patient and look at a few pitches, but when you see him go up and swing at that first pitch, it's a pitch that he went up looking for, and he got it. Only this time he just fouled it back. And it's usually going to be a fastball.
Dobbs has not had a lot of success against lefties this year. 7 for 46, a 152 average. Pitch is just up.
There was a time early in the year when Dobbs was forced into playing every day. And he was the everyday first baseman against some tough left-handed pitching.
Howell had some terrific years, as you pointed out, with the Rays. 2012, an ERA of right around 3. A strike.
When you've been traded from the Rays to another club, I wonder if you save your theme outfits that Joe Madden likes to have on many of the road trips.
I know one thing you do save, and that is the workout regimen and the concepts that the Rays teach at the very bottom of their minor league organization all the way to the top. They are very regimented in how they teach pitchers, the shoulder exercises, all of those things. One-two coming. In the dirt. Fedorovich knocks it down. Talked with Bert Badenhop about that. He wasn't there very long, but he was very impressed with the way they run things over in St. Pete. Counts 2-2. Dobbs battling the lefty. It's a good spot to bring in Howell because you've got Yelich right behind him. Marlins have seen a lot of lefties lately. 3 consecutive starters. Madison Bumgarner, Hyun-Jung Ryu, and tonight Chris Capuano. 2-2. And a spin towards Echeverria.
The Dodgers mix in a terrific right-hander, Zach Greinke, tomorrow night, and then the National League's best left-hander, Clayton Kershaw, on Thursday afternoon.
Two coming. And Dobbs just stays alive on a breaking ball that was floating outside. And he hangs in there at 2-2.
We talked about Dobbs the other night. 8 hits, 8 pinch hits shy of 100. So he's sitting on 92.
Dobbs cracks one to left. Crawford is there and he makes the catch. And now Yelich will get a shot at Howell. Marlins fan 27. Love this one in your direction. Tommy, your favorite change at Kauffman Stadium?
think I like the way they added seats out by the fountains where there were not seats before. I think that gave it a nice look. Obviously, the Kansas City Royals Hall of Fame was nice, but the seats gave it a nice touch.
Yelich against Howell. Echeverria at second. Mathis at first.
I'll tell you, the youngster Christian Yelich has sure seen his fill of tough major league left-handed pitching over the last few days. This is something you don't see in AA or AAA.
Fedorovich doing a nice job behind the plate.
He sure has. He has smothered a number of balls in the dirt.
26-year-old, his third season in the big leagues, though his stops in 2011, 2012 were pretty brief, just 10 games combined. Marlins have a run. They've tied the game. Howell. Working deliberately and misses down low. It's 2-1. One of the things that made last night's ball game fun is the pace of both Hyun-Jin Ryu and Jose Fernandez. There wasn't a whole lot of walking around and waiting.
Boy, another nice job.
So Yelich has put himself in a hitter's count. The question is, will he get something to hit?
Watch how Fedorovich just smothers this. Just gets down on his knees, sticks the chest protector out. All right, just stop. Just get in front of him.
That was, as our producer John Sulzer pointed out, Charles Johnson style.
Boy, he was tremendous at that. CJ would keep that ball right in front of him all the time.
Let's see what 3-1 brings Yelich's way. He walked him, and Solano comes up. Well, if you could pick one hitter in this spot, you know, you might think Stanton, you might think Morrison, but for the Marlins, the guy has been Solano.
Look at that. On the year with runners in scoring position, 383.
Don Mattingly says, I don't think I want the lefty to face Solano, so my deep and talented bullpen. Here's who I'm going to bring in.
Looks like he's going to make a double switch, too.
Quinn Walcott, the home plate umpire. Yasiel Puig arrives on time in right field. So Puig enters the ball game. The Metro PCS called to the pen. exploded in a long, protracted bottom of the sixth. Yasiel Puig comes into the ball game, and he's in right field. Skip Schumacher goes from right to second. We told you he's versatile. And the guy that gave up Giancarlo Stanton's homer the other night, Chris Withrow.
Yeah, we saw Withrow last night throw real hard. Got a good live fastball. He got the fastball up that Stanton hit out. And a sharp breaking ball. One of those 12-6 nice curveballs.
Two outs. Here is Solano. And he almost hit him. Spun one, and it backed up on him. J.P. Howell, a third of an inning. Brandon League, a third of an inning. They each got it out, and they're each gone. Both walked a hitter. League gave up 2 hits and a run. Solano swings and misses.
Chased a high fastball, hard one to lay off of. It's a hard pitch to lay off of when you're looking fastball.
See what he gets. 1 ball, 1 strike. Letter high fastball. One-two coming. And Withrow steps off. Dodgers still out hitting Miami 12-8. Were it not for the 4 double plays the Marlins have induced, 3 of them on a wild night by Jacob Turner, one by Archimedes Caminero. Breaking ball didn't come far enough for a strike. 2-2. So Solano very good with runners in scoring position. With 2 outs and runners in scoring position, he's even better. He's hitting .563 with 2 outs and runners in scoring position. And this time he goes down swinging. Withrow goes up with a fastball and strikes him out. Miami leaves the bags loaded, but scores a run to tie the game. The Marlins. The Rockies are here on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Saturday, the 24th at 7:10, Legends of Wrestling Night. Dinger, the mascot for the Rockies, actually is going to jump into the ring with Bret the Hitman Hart. Over a dozen other superstars and legends after the game. Live wrestling event on the West Plaza. I think Craig Minervini will be out there.
That would be Craig DeGeorge. I think Dinger's gonna taunt Bret the Hitman Hart. Right, Craig?
He was one of the toughest customers ever, Bret the Hitman Hart. As you guys know, the former Intercontinental Champion of the world.
Craig, at what point in your wrestling career did you realize that it wasn't real? How long did that take?
You know what? That was always a sticking point because if you saw the hits they took, you'd say those are real.
And there's no doubt that those guys.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
See, Craig signed that disclaimer a long time ago.
They actually, but the beating these guys took physically, you wonder how they did it night after night. Yes, there may have been a little conversation on what actually happened in the ring, but the entertainment. I'll tell you what, guys. I've covered World Series, Stanley Cup, you name it. When Hulk Hogan came into the ring, from an atmosphere standpoint, it matched anything I've ever been at. From an atmosphere standpoint, electric. Maybe it'll be like that on Saturday night. We'll see.
Best athlete who was a wrestler that you covered?
Well, they had a lot of good ones, including Randy Macho Man Savage.
He was a minor league ball player in the Cardinals.
Yes, he was, Tommy. The late Randy Macho Man Savage, who I believe he got to AAA, maybe with Memphis at the time, and his brother, Leaping Lanny Poffo, the poet laureate, will be here Saturday night.
All right. Well, Tommy and I will get all geeked up on Slim Jims and Mountain Dew, and we'll be
a lot of good athletes. Andre the Giant wasn't the quickest, but he was the eighth wonder of the world, Rich.
Yeah, he was a very good actor as well. Yes. Here's the 2-1 coming to Andre Ethier, and Ethier takes up. It's 3-1, so it's a bullpen game from here on out. Dan Jennings has had some ups and downs of late out of the Marlins pen. And obviously this is not a team where you can afford to have a down. Ethier's 2 for 2 with a walk.
It's also the type of game, the more you walk that tightrope, the more you leave yourself open of teetering off, and you just can't start walking anymore and opening up the door for the Dodgers.
3-2 coming, and it's fouled back. Jacob Turner started 5 innings, 10 hits. Turner a wild night. He walked 5, 2 of them intentional, but 4 double plays. Turner induced 3 of them. Archimedes Caminero got 1 to finish the 6th. And Ethier, who's pushing 400 in his career against the Marlins with a 2 for 2 night tonight, hangs in there at 3-2.
Rich, how about one of our MVP candidates, Paul Goldschmidt? The Diamondbacks have a 5-2 lead in Cincinnati in the 9th inning. Goldschmidt with a grand slam tonight. 31st home run, has 100 RBIs now.
Another 3-2. Now the Dodgers have done this run with a variety of things happening, one of which is no Matt Kemp, who many would say is the Dodgers' best player. But when you can run Ethier out in center, Puig in right, Crawford in left, that's a dynamite outfield even without Kemp. Got him. Jennings strikes out Ethier.
Good job. He stayed with the fastball.
Another 7 o'clock game tomorrow night. We're on the air 6:30. Marlins Live. I heard the car, and apparently it took the exit. So Chevron presents the starters: Zach Greinke, Nathan Eovaldi. Greinke 11-3, having an outstanding year. And Eovaldi, a former Dodger. Made a lot of starts with the Dodgers where the Marlins acquired him in the Hanley Ramirez trade.
Kind of a bounce-back start for Nathan Eovaldi after the 3 innings, 12 hits, 11 runs to the Giants last time out.
Juan Uribe is on that list of active batting leaders with a minimum of 100 at-bats against the Marlins. He was 7th to start the night. And he's gone 2 for 3, so he's charging up right on Matt Holliday and Adrian Beltre's tail. Jennings misses outside. Skip Schumacher is on deck. Little pop, Stanton in and makes the catch. Well, good pitch by Dan Jennings, and there are 2 outs. What do you got on Twitter? Anything catching your eye?
Yeah, I was going through here. I'm not sure on this. I haven't had time to look, but Chuck wanted to know. We talked about the Dodgers with a couple of Cy Young winners. Is there another team in the major leagues that has 2 Cy Young winners? With the Yankees?
Well, what was the question? What was the top of the question? The Giants.
Other than the Dodgers.
Well, the Giants.
The Giants, that's right.
Yeah,
the Giants.
Lincecum and Zito.
All right, so we answered Chuck's question. If there are any more, Chuck, you'll have to look them up.
The Phillies. Have the Phillies got 2? Halladay, Cliff Lee, has he won a Cy Young? Yes. As an Indian? Did he win like 22 games, lose only 3? Schumacher down the line. Yelich goes to pick it up. And Schumacher's got a double, a 2-out double here in the 7th. Now here's where Tommy's iPad skills come in handy.
Well, but then I have to get out of the Twitter account, so it's a two-edged sword.
All right, I'll stall for you, and so will Jeff Mathis. Mathis goes to the mound to talk to Jennings. Here's Fedorovich. Now remember, here's the tricky part about the Dodger lineup. In the double switch, Don Mattingly brought Yasiel Puig into the game. Puig is on deck.
So in this situation, he'd certainly rather go after Fedorovich.
And there is Puig on deck. Puig given the night off and then fined when he got to the ballpark late.
Cliff Lee, 2008 American League Cy Young winner.
So the Phillies have 2, the Giants have 2. Twitter poll question. Yasiel Puig, does he need to temper his emotion? No, let him play. Hashtag Puig play on. High chopper, third base. Lucas up to get it. Across the diamond. Morrison scoops and holds. And Dan Jennings pitches a adventurous but scoreless 7th inning. 4-4 Dodgers Marlins.
Coventry Healthcare of Florida.
Look at that smile.
I'm guessing first game, maybe.
Giancarlo Stanton now comes to the plate. Chris Withrow continues on for the Dodgers. These two had a meeting last night. And the people demand a replay. Giancarlo Stanton with a laser beam that bounced out around the home run sculpture in left center field. And so here's round two between these two. No fastball there, a breaking ball for a strike.
Yeah, dropped in that breaking ball first pitch. Yeah, Stanton, 2 solid line drive hits tonight, 7-game hitting streak now. Lomo on deck has extended his streak to 8 games.
Stanton fires one up into the seats. Hit Tracker Online had Stanton's true distance at 430 feet last night. I think with a line drive homer like that, you don't have the trajectory that gets you that extra footage. That's smacked into center field, and boy, is he dialed in right now. 3 consecutive hits, and they all have come off the bat scorching. His last double came off the bat 106 miles an hour. Let's check in with Allison Williams. A-Dub.
Rich, Logan Morrison stepping up to bat to the music he picked in part for the Miami Heat.
By the White Stripes, 7 Nation Army, and it's because the Miami Heat use it when they do their starting lineups, and the whole crowd goes, Maybe you guys could do that. It'd be cool.
Lomo looking for the crowd to get a bit involved with his walk-up song. Now, there are rules and regulations when it comes to the songs you can choose. First of all, you have to limit the profanity, of course, but also it can't be too long. The songs are supposed to start as soon as the PA announcer is done and finish by the time that the batter walks into the cutout around home plate. But see, guys find a way around that here and there. In fact, Kenny Lofton, there's a story about him with the Giants. When his walk-up song would play, he would purposely take his time walking into the batter's box to make sure that he got it to end just at the spot that he wanted to. So he would take his time and then walk into the batter's box. He almost had like a choreographed dance to this Missy Elliott song, kind of bobbing his head, shaking a little bit, and then as soon as he would step into the box, it would end right where he wanted it to. So guys find a way to make their jams play a little bit longer when they choose so, when they're walking up. Guys.
Yeah, pitchers used to love that.
Yeah, I bet. And they complain about the length of games.
0-2. And Morrison fouls off. That foul ball into the Dodger dugout, a weird angle.
Boy, this sent a number of guys flying in that Dodger dugout. Off that top bench there.
That's scary stuff. One of our cameramen last night got hit, Joe Monahan.
Yeah, it was an errant throw between innings. Joe's got the he's got the looks like Mike Tyson. Got the stitches.
Badge of honor.
Yeah, back at work. Hasn't missed a beat.
0-2. Morrison ground ball, base hit, right field. His second hit. You got a different right fielder out there. Remember, on a similar ball, Stanton took third, but that's when Schumacher was in right. You got Puig out there. Stanton watches all the highlight shows. He's seen Puig's throws this year.
Yeah, and I think at the time we mentioned, had Puig been there, he may not have thought about that, but he knows right away. Ball in right field. Oh, that's right. Yasiel Puig is out there.
Well, the Marlins have runners at first and second. Old school would tell you that Lucas might be dropping down a bunt, but when you look at the run expectancy index, especially in the middle of a lineup like this, he is going to square. He takes outside. One of the things you have to take into consideration in the index,
a couple of things. Go ahead.
And the index is kind of like for all players, is the fact that Lucas does hit a lot of ground balls up the middle, and he is a real candidate to hit into a double play.
One of the things that could happen if Lucas is successful and he moves both runners up, you have first base open, they could elect to walk Ruggiano to pitch to Echeverria,
who is a double play machine this year.
So
Lucas showed bunt, and he does bunt, but not well. Fouls it back to the screen. You think he had to bunt at Dartmouth a lot?
You know, most players who get to this level probably, especially with the aluminum bat, didn't have to bunt in college very much.
Hanley Ramirez talking to Withrow. You've got Stanton at second and Morrison at first. There's a lot of pressure on Stanton here to get a good jump and not get forced at third. He squares and takes outside. Hanley Ramirez was breaking behind the runner.
Yeah, a little bit of a mistake by Withrow. If a pitcher sees the shortstop do that, his job is to step off. If he's not going to throw, I mean, he could turn and throw, but he has to step off because there's a huge opening there with Hanley Ramirez over at second base.
It's a big hole on that left side of the infield if Lucas chooses to swing. He bunts, and again he fouls it off, and he puts himself even at 2 balls and 2 strikes.
And a quick discussion with Joe Espada. You don't want to make any mistakes with 2 strikes. I would rather see, in this case with 2 strikes, I would rather see Ed go ahead and swing.
Ramirez and Schumacher are looking for 2 up the middle. Gonzalez is still in front of the bag at first. Lucas does swing, and he lines one into the seats. A.J. Ramos in Miami's bullpen.
Great job by the bullpen last night.
Pair of singles to open the inning. Stanton and Morrison. Wood throws 2-2. Lucas a tapper towards third. Uribe gets it out. Schumacher's turn is on the money. As we pointed out, Lucas has a tendency to hit a lot of ground balls, and that's a double play. And now here comes Ruggiano with a runner at third and 2 outs.
Well, we've talked about the Dodgers. They've hit into 4 double plays tonight. This is a big one. First one that the Marlins have hit into, but it hurts. In a key situation, 2 quick outs, just like that.
So there's 2 ways to play that. There's the let Lucas swing school of thought. There's have Lucas bunt school of thought. And one of the reasons you try to have him bunt is to stay away from that.
I always hate to see a hitter. It's one thing if a pitcher tries to bunt with 2 strikes, but I always hate to see a hitter. That time it didn't work out.
And of course, if he's not bunting early in the count, maybe he gets a better pitch. Ruggiano didn't get a good pitch there, but it was a strike, or so called. 96-mile-an-hour fastball. Quickly, it's 0-2. of those nights where Miami has had their opportunities. The Dodgers have actually had more.
How about this? Every half inning in this game, except the Marlins bottom of the second, every half inning has had a runner in scoring position. So both teams have had many opportunities.
Look at that, 25 at bats and only 5 hits combined with runners in scoring position. Check swing. He went. James Hoy says strikeout. Luciano doesn't like it. But the Marlins leave Stan at third. Ooh.
In the 4th inning, though, the Dodgers get a run on a deflected ball, an infield base hit by Carl Crawford. Then it's Mark Ellis getting a base hit, seeing I single up the middle. Capuano comes in to score. Adrian Gonzalez finds the hole on the right side. He gets an RBI. Luciano on an attempted double play. Fielder's choice. Drives in a run.
Yasiel Puig drives it to left. It's deep. Yelich at the wall. And it's gone. He was late to the park, but he cranks one to left. And the Dodgers have the lead.
They love Puig in LA. There's no question about that. There are quite a few Dodger fans here. Haven't had a whole lot to cheer about.
Now the Marlins leaving Jennings in to face Puig to open up the 8th inning. You've got Carl Crawford and then the pitcher spot and then another lefty. So it was a gamble to have Jennings pitch to Puig, and certainly it goes the Dodgers' way.
Boy, and he just laid a fastball right out over the middle of the plate. Up on Jeff Conine's stairway to heaven.
Crawford now. And he lines one back to the screen. Late to the park, but early on that fastball.
Yeah, he wasn't late on that fastball. And Puig had been 0 for 11 and just 2 for his last 17.
2-2.
.99 miles off the bat, 99 miles an hour. You can round it to 100 if you want. Crawford will roll out to Solano. It's amazing how things can turn. The Marlins with a great opportunity in the 7th, don't get it. And one pitch to Puig, and the Dodgers jump on top.
Jerry Hairston pinch hitting. This is the spot when Mattingly made the double switch that he filled in with Withrow, the pitcher. So now Hairston will pinch hit for the pitcher.
Hairston takes down low. There was buzz in this ballpark, and now it's very quiet. 24 hits combined. The Dodgers have a 1-run lead. Hairston into left. Yelich over and there and makes the catch. And so here's Gonzalez. Cholula hot sauce spotlight player. As a quarterback in high school, as well as a terrific hitter in Tijuana and in San Diego. He would go over and play summer ball in Tijuana with his brother. Also got to the big leagues. Marlins first overall pick. Of course, the piece that the Marlins needed out of the bullpen. Played Texas Rangers. He was sent there in 03.
Played in the same area as Mike Jacobs.
Chula Vista. On a strike.
I think I've asked this question before. At that time, the Marlins had another big right-handed hitting first base prospect. Never made it to the big league, Jason Stokes. But I believe Texas wanted Adrian Gonzalez. Now you can look back and you say, well, boy, you could have sent Stokes over there, but that wasn't the case. I believe Texas wanted Adrian Gonzalez.
Swing and a miss and a high fastball. Gonzalez strikes out, but Yasiel Puig not in the starting lineup, but in this game, and the difference in this game. And it's 5-4 Dodgers. Dodgers in Miami tonight. You can order food directly from your smartphone. Pay attention, Tommy Hutton. You will like this. And you can do it by just downloading the MLB.com at the ballpark mobile app. These features and more. You can check in through the app, earn free tickets. Download the free MLB.com at the ballpark app today. John Tuitu working hard down there at third. He's got a Miami Hurricane shirt on.
He's always available.
John has one of the largest collections of collegiate T-shirts. Much larger than that of Ronald Belisario, who only has 2 or 3.
Well, another one of the hard throwers. Belisario, good fastball, mid to upper 90s, slider, a little bit of a splitter.
Chopper foul. Uribe jumps on it. Danny Echeverria, then Jeff Mathis, and then the pitcher spot. Echeverria earlier tonight, an RBI single in the 4th. This was a wild start by Jacob Turner. He gave up 4 runs, 3 of them earned. Lasted just 5 innings. I think that's one of the reasons that Mike Redmond was trying to squeeze another inning out of Dan Jennings and had him facing Puig to open up that inning because he had a lefty bat behind.
It's the nature of a manager. It's so easy to look back at the Lucas at bat about the bunting. It's easy to second guess that, well, I bring in a right-hander, but then he opens himself up for left-handers after Puig. Belisario just finds that outside corner, and he did.
It's a great pitch. And the first out of the bottom of the 8th. Mathis has a pair of hits. He's 2 for 3. Little tapper and Hanley a running throw. Louis has this tweet. We mentioned Ichiro is a hit shy of 4,000 in his career. Louis says, hey, America is home of the World Series. Only American baseball stats should count in the USA. So,
well, I think it's recognized as that.
I don't think anyone is saying it's a major league record or anything like that. But it is pretty amazing what he's done, and I would expect, as you see, Paco Rodriguez, the unorthodox lefty. I would expect for what Ichiro has done in his time in the United States, Tommy, that he is a Hall of Famer.
I think most agree on that, yeah.
Don Mattingly out to center field, or out to the mound as Juan Pierre is announced, and Mattingly stares out in the outfield.
He's going to go with Miami's own Paco Rodriguez.
Bullpen again. It's Rodriguez coming in. Belisario doesn't look too happy.
Born in Miami, went to University of Florida. Got a real weird delivery. Spreads his hands apart, kind of lifts it up. A pause, a hesitation. Decent fastball, a little slider, but the delivery is what gives hitters fits.
Juan Pierre was announced. Jake Marisnick will take the at-bat now. So it's Marisnick. Rodriguez misses away with a fastball.
I'm sure Paco has some friends and family in attendance.
Since June 9th, he's 2-0 with a 0.35 ERA and a 0.62 WHIP. Opponent's hitting just a .140. So on a great run, he catches the outside corner. All National League relievers, he leads them with a 145 opponent's batting average. So while the Dodgers unbelievably had just one All-Star selection, that was Clayton Kershaw, Paco Rodriguez has been having an All-Star type season.
You know, as you see this Dodger ball club, the things that start to really impress you when you look ahead to postseason, and we know how important bullpens are in postseason, they certainly have a good one.
Struck him out. Rodriguez got the back door or thereabouts, and Miami goes down 1-2-3 in the 8th. Wow. Allison Williams is down below. A-Dub?
All right, guys, Ryan Webb in to pitch here for the Marlins, and we've been talking tonight about walk-up songs, entrance songs. Well, Ryan Webb tonight came out to a song by Muse, one of his favorite bands, but pretty soon he will actually be coming out to a song he wrote. He took the time to go through, he laid down the electric guitar, the bass, the drums. You can hear it a little bit there in the background. That is a song he put together. He's still refining it, kind of tweaking it a little bit. He said, I know why musicians are so crazy, because I keep listening to it over and over and finding just something off, something wrong. But he hopes to have it by September, ready for the ballpark to play when he comes out to pitch in a game. It's pretty cool. You can hear a little bit there. And he would probably be one of the only Major League players to come out to their own jam. So Ryan Webb, very musically gifted. He even has a drum set here at the ballpark that he'll go jam out on from time to time.
All right. Thank you, Allison. Ryan Webb gets Hanley Ramirez, Andre Ethier, and then Juan Uribe.
The Marlins have used 4 pitchers. The Dodgers have used 6. And it will be 7 when they go to their closer.
And big Kenley Jansen is up in the bullpen. Chuck Krim, the bullpen coach for the Dodgers, out there with him. Hanley gets into one, drives it left field. That ball's deep. That ball is off the wall. Hanley around first, and he's got himself a double. His first hit of the series. He really cranked it.
Yeah, Hanley had been 0 for 8 in the series. But gets that two-seamer that didn't sink too much. Came right back in the middle of the plate. It's tough. It would be tough to be on the Dodgers and remember all the things you have to do when you get a hit, go into the dugout. There's a lot of choreography.
Well, they've had plenty of practice. I mean, with all the runs they've been scoring, all the wins they've been getting.
The way they've played.
I think the Marlins would certainly trade some of those wins.
Hey, the Marlins have a little choreography themselves too. They just haven't had the opportunity to use it as much.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Is that, you know, if you're the Dodgers, hey, you can dance around second base if you want. You've won 42 of 52 games. You got Ethier, then you got Uribe. Ethier and Uribe have had great runs against the Marlins. Uribe's got 5 hits in this series. Ethier is 2 for 3 tonight. Obviously, you want to see Kenley Jansen with just a 1-run deficit if you're Miami, and if you're the Dodgers, you want some insurance. You want to get Hanley Ramirez home.
Got to be careful too with Hanley out there. Doesn't steal at the rate he once did, but he's a smart base runner.
Has your Twitter feed gone dead over there?
I sense sarcasm.
Yes. Actually, it's a lull in the game. You know, all the fun tonight for Marlin fans kind of left when Yasiel Puig walked up and hit the first pitch he saw off the top of the wall and then out in left center field. That's the difference in the game. It was 4-4. And Webb with a breaking ball. Ethier goes down swinging.
I had a tweet from Sneak. I had to look back to find it. What are the requirements for a first-year player to be considered Rookie of the Year? Well, as a hitter, you cannot have more than, I believe it's 130, either 130 plate appearances or 130 at-bats. And as a pitcher, there's an innings limit. So if you fall under those categories, if you have fewer than those things, you qualify to be a rookie.
Chopper towards short. Echeverria, and Morrison bobbles and can't make the play. And that's a play that Etch probably had a little more time than he thought.
I think he did. He tried to get rid of that from an awkward position where he couldn't get a lot on the throw. I think one more step, he would have had a little better angle, a little more on the throw, and he's going to be charged with an error.
So the runner isn't even in the picture yet. It's 2 errors on Echeverria tonight. And that's not something Marlin fans are accustomed to seeing.
All of a sudden, those errors piling up a little bit. 13 on the year now.
Schumacher, 1 out. Well, the Dodgers have hit into 4 double plays. Schumacher's hit into 2. One to Skip Schumacher. Schumacher with the Cardinals last year missed a month and a half with a pair of DL trips. Pops this one up. Mathis over. And Webb has the second out.
Louis tweeting, Rich, it'd be a shame if Jose has a couple great outings, a couple more, or however many more he has, and not even be in contention for Rookie of the Year. Well, he's going to be in contention. There's no question about it. The only problem, as we've said, if Puig continues on, the Dodgers win their division, which looks like they are, and for the last 2-3 weeks we don't see Jose Fernandez, then that makes it tougher on him, to no fault of his own.
Well, Puig's got a dozen homers, 16 doubles in 68 games. He's hitting over 350. He's slugging over 550, and his on-base percentage is close to 415. So if he continues at that pace, he's the Rookie of the Year, hands down.
Yeah, even if he drops off a little bit. Yeah,
because those numbers are unbelievable. So obviously, Fernandez will be in the discussion. Runner goes, check swing.
Jose has just been tremendous since June 1st. Jose Fernandez is 6-0, or has an ERA of 1.64 at home this year. With his win last night, he's 6-0 at home with a 1.40 ERA. His earned run average in this ballpark is 1.40.
He has the best ERA in baseball from June 1st on.
Yeah.
One and two. Tim Fedorovich, who was 1 for 2.
The other stat I like about Jose is in his last 14 starts, the Marlins have gone 11-3. So when he pitches, a good chance they're going to win.
Puig is on deck. 1-2 coming. Fedorovich fouls it out of play.
So he's going to be in contention, but I think it's going to be tough. I think certainly the game last night, a big one for him and for the ball club because of the way they played against the club that is the hottest team in baseball and getting a lot of attention.
Broken bat. This is going to be a tough play. Lucas better hurry. He double clutches and he doesn't get him. And it costs Miami another run. And now it's 6-4. And it brings Puig to the plate.
He had time. Fedorovich doesn't run that well, but the double clutch cost him, and he clearly beat it out.
It's going to be an infield hit. Here's Puig. who blasted one out of here to give the Dodgers a 1-run lead in the 8th. Breaking ball popped him up. Morrison, foul territory. Makes the catch. A costly run, though. An insurance run for the Dodgers. And Miami will see Kenley Jansen in a moment. Metro PCS unlimited data, talk, and text on Metro PCS wireless for all. By Kaiser University, now offering degrees in sports management. Learn more at kaiseruniversity.edu. And by Gulfstream Park, summer racing at Gulfstream is going on now.
Kind of curious as to why the umpires are on the mound with Kenley Jansen, Hanley Ramirez out there. I don't know if they're trying to do a little yard work. Perhaps that might be the reason.
Well, there's been, how many pitchers have there been out there?
Well, Jansen's the 7th pitcher
for the Dodgers
that the Dodgers have used.
And the Marlins have had 4 different chuckers out there.
So 11 pitchers have been used. They don't all stand in the same spot out there, so it's bound to get chewed up just a little bit.
Jansen arrives. Big guy, was a terrific defensive catcher for the Netherlands in the 2009 World Baseball Classic. And a big arm. The Dodgers decided to move him out from the plate and put him out on the mound. And it's been a nice transition for him. He has nailed down his last 12 save opportunities with a 1.31 ERA. In that span.
Nick Punto becomes the 3rd different Dodger to play second base tonight. This has the feel, Rich, of a spring training game with all the pitchers.
Or a September Major League game. When everybody's got 32, 33, some teams last year had 35 guys on their roster.
Which will bring up a whole nother topic when we get to September, because I think that's ridiculous when you can bring up that many guys.
Well, Jansen has finished his warm-up tosses. The umpires are still out there, and it looks like they're still waiting on the grounds crew to get out and maybe do some moundscaping, if we could call it that. Jansen obviously doesn't like what he sees out on the mound.
there looks to be confusion because this is the first time Mike Redmond's been involved in any conversation.
There doesn't seem to be a big hole out there, but obviously whatever Jansen felt on the rubber he didn't like. Marlins do have the top of their order up, if and when they ever get up.
Totally befuddled by this. I'm assuming it's something wrong with the mound that doesn't suit Jansen, but there isn't anybody else moving.
Allison, you have an update. What's up?
What we're hearing right now is that they can't find the grounds crew to come out and fix the mound, whatever is bothering him or is wrong with it. And that's what I just heard with talking to Joe and a few other guys, that they can't find the grounds crew to get them out here.
Any volunteers? Grab a rake, Allison.
Yeah, somebody get a rake. Get Craig. Give him a rake.
Here they come.
Well, it's more than a rake. You got to bring the water and the tamper, so to speak.
Just what this game needed, a delay here. See, Kenley Jansen is a former catcher, as you pointed out, Rich. It shouldn't bother him at all. He should just get it and throw it.
Well, getting ready for Marlins live out in center field is Craig Minervini and Jeff Conine. I know they look transfixed out there with this delay.
It's a lot of grooming, Jeff.
Transfixed, that's a good word. I've never seen him fix a hole next to the rubber for a pitcher in the middle of an inning. Have you, Tommy?
No, two things I've never seen. I've never seen that. I mean, most pitchers like to pitch out of a little bit of a divot. And secondly, I've never seen a wait so long for a ground crew to get out there.
Hey, they're only down, I think, 6 this year. So these guys will wear a lot of hats, and they weren't ready for it, I guess.
Well, this isn't a grounds crew. It's just like a groundsman.
Groundsman.
There's one guy.
He's not getting any help at all. He's an all-purpose guy.
He's versatile. Yep.
Apparently he has to be.
You know, once Kenley Jansen, who's a big guy, once he digs in there and makes a couple of deliveries to the plate, there's going to be a little bit of a hole there anyway.
Does he do this every time he comes into the game? He fixes the hole?
Boy, I don't know.
Because every mound is going to have a hole by the 9th inning when he comes in.
By the 9th inning, Niner, and also with all the pitchers that have been used tonight.
Yeah, Mattingly pulling out all the stops here. We've seen that in the first 2 games. I'm just wondering, does Don do this every night, using his bullpen like this?
Well, he knows. This is the way to look at it, though. Mattingly knows the next 2 games he has Greinke and Kershaw. So he's going to get deep. He's assuming he's going to get deep in the next 2 games with his starters.
And his bullpen has been a big part of this historic run. And the Dodgers bullpen, we talked about the numbers that they've rolled up. They lead all major leaguers in opponents' batting average and whip since the All-Star break. So it's not just Yasiel Puig and the offense and the starters. Trey Hillman, the bench coach of the Dodgers, there with Mattingly. All right, the hole is fixed. Jansen is ready. The Marlins do have the top of the order up, but remember, because of the run that the Dodgers scored in the top of the inning, it's a 2-run lead that Jansen's trying to protect, and he pours in a strike.
That's why that second run was so important, with the anticipation of knowing that Stanton was going to hit in this inning.
Solano, then Stan. If anyone reaches, Morrison. Yelich late on the fastball, which was 91 miles an hour. It's 0-2. Converted catchers always have the innate ability on the mound to hide the ball. And Yelich doesn't look like he's seeing it real well.
Because those last 2 fastballs, 91 and 93, not of the 98 variety, but Yelich has picked them up well and is really late on both of them.
0-2, bounced up the middle. Punto makes the play. And the Dodgers have an out here in the ninth. Arizona beats Cincinnati 5-2. The Diamondbacks doesn't look like they're going to gain any ground on the Dodgers. The Dodgers are 2 outs away from a win here. But Arizona very quietly is hanging in the National League wild card race, and they take a bite out of the Reds, a team that's in front of them in the wild card race.
You mentioned the big the grand slam by Paul Goldschmidt in that one.
Arizona draws within 5 games of Cincinnati in that wild card race. Pittsburgh is beating San Diego early 2-0. Neil Walker with a home run. It's in the second in San Diego. Jansen gets strike 2. Donovan Solano at the plate. Jansen had a run earlier this year where he retired 27 consecutive hitters. And he dusts off Solano easily. The last Dodger to accomplish that was back in 2006. And you almost forget that Greg Maddux pitched for the Dodgers. But Maddux did it back in 2006.
I was going to throw out an Eric Gagne, perhaps.
Stanton now is 3 for 4. A lot of run on that 94-mile-an-hour fastball.
Yeah, it moves. It's not a straight 94.
Stanton takes in. Jansen dials it up to 96. Tampa Bay leading Baltimore 7-4 as Baltimore has hit somewhat of a dry spell.
And it spins up the slider.
Morrison hoping he gets a shot. Though Jansen looks in complete control right now. One, 2. And it stays at 1-2. Remember, Boston is in San Francisco. The Red Sox have the first run against the Giants, 1-0.
Well, they actually shut out the Giants last night after going coast to coast. John Lester, 8 1/3 shutout innings.
Stanton hits a high pop-up. Gonzalez is under it, and the Dodgers even the series at a game apiece. Yasiel Puig with a big home run in the 8th. 7 Dodger pitchers combined, 6 of them backing up Chris Capuano, who got the start. And we'll wrap it up in a moment. 6-4, the Dodgers on 16 hits beat the Marlins.